Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting summertime episode of the Jim Cornette Experience. Today, we're a week away from the 4th of July, and a bunch more folks have been granted their independence from the WWE. Plus, we'll talk about how many dependents Roman Reigns has, and Rudy Giuliani currently soiling his depends. All that and more today, and to join me, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's the independent podcaster we all depend on, the great Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here bright and early with you again, another Saturday, and I have to say I have not had this little... Boy, that sentence went off the rails very, very early. I have not had such little stress going into a show knowing I have to watch something or review something or prepare something. Today, I feel free and easy. I did not have to watch AEW. I'm just ready to let it roll.
You're free and easy today. You're a podcaster with loose morals. You're just free and easy.
Footloose and fancy free.
Footloose.
And
Well, who was that? Kawada and Fuyuki?
Yes, that's right. Very good.
Thank you. See, there you go.
Remember the Footloose versus the Can-Am? That was one of the
35 years later, I still remember
matches.
that. Yeah, I can't remember anybody's name on a show I watched last week.
Hey,
but hey.
We're free and easy, and we're going just who knows where today.
Easy. I'm easy.
I know what you think of Doug Furness, and I know eventually they were in the WWF, but during those peak years, let's say 89 through 93, what did you think of Crawford and Furness?
Now, for the more modern WWF fan, Crawford was known as Phil LaFon on WWF TV, and what was that, 97?
96.
6. Okay.
96.
I loved their team. I thought they were great. They were the one of the bells of the tag team ball as far as Japanese teams go, or teams that were regularly competing in Japan. They never got a run here in the States, even though they were both North American. Doug obviously was American, and Phil, that was his real name, was Canadian, I believe originally, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, they never got a run.
French Canadian, I believe.
Well, there you go. This may explain something later. But they never got a run in the United States except for that god-awful presentation of them in the WWF. And part of it was fish out of water, and part of it was, unfortunately, by that time, Crawford, LaFon, had a number of injuries. And that had slowed him down a little bit. And also the personality factor with Phil was not one of the French Canadians that's over the top, and that he was one of the dry Canadians, even though he may have been French Canadian. Where he
on the chart, I guess Jacques Rougeau is 10.
Jacques Rougeau is a 10. Phil, he was a very nice guy and was a great athlete, et cetera, but he wasn't an over-the-top personality, and he wasn't, that was the problem, is that they were starting into the Attitude Era, and Vince with wanting personality and color and, something to hang your hat on, as JR would say. So Doug had some oomph to him, but still was primarily an athlete, a wrestler. And Phil was pretty dry. So they were doomed from the start in that environment, in the WWF at that point in time, even though they had been one of the best tag teams in the world in the ring in the Japanese environment several years before. And Doug had some runs with WCW where he'd been on national TV here, but primarily after they'd broken him in, he was a football hero at the University of Tennessee. He was legitimately laid claim to being able to say the world's strongest man, Doug Furness, just like Mark Henry did. There's all kinds of different lifting records, but he had achieved a record total at one of the combinations of lifts, etc., that qualified him to be able to say that truthfully. I mean, 33-inch fucking thighs and like a 36-inch vertical leap at 250 or 60 pounds. So he'd been a football star at UT, which is why he got into wrestling with the Fullers in Knoxville. And when Kevin was booking, I think, or had a lot to do with it at the time because he was in the territory then. And he'd worked WCW, and he had a little bit more showbiz to him for the American style and just a little more fire and facials in the ring. And, but just a tremendous guy. And what a fucking athlete. Again, he was doing the Frankensteiner, that, Scotty may have done it first, but he was doing the same move, just not calling it that. But at 5'10" and 260 with those goddamn thighs, it was incredible. And the drop kicks, because he had the spring where he'd push off the guy and do a complete backflip almost and land on his stomach. So anyway, the answer is I loved the team. I didn't love them in the WWF. And then they got in a fucking car wreck when they made the mistake of riding with Sid on the way to the town. And did LaFawn ever recover?
I don't remember if he ever wrestled again. If he did, maybe something in Canada I don't know about, but I don't recall ever hearing about him wrestle again.
I don't think. And apparently the story, well, who else was in the car with him? Was it Scorpio?
That sounds right. I knew it was Sid, and it may have been Scorpio.
They've got a rented Lincoln Town car with a fucking moon roof or a sun roof or whatever kind of roof it was. And somehow Sid just decided that either he needed sun or he had too much sun and was doing over 100 miles an hour down the interstate in his fucking rented town car and trying to adjust the sunroof and fucking lost control and nearly killed them all. And that was the end of their run in the auspicious run in the WWF.
You know what's interesting? On the Arezi podcast, which we'll talk about later, we've talked before about the idea that you, when you left WCW, kind of had that door open where you were thinking about going to Japan after May, once Bobby's contract was up at that time. If you guys had gone to Japan, it would have been...
Well, now, hold on, Cowboy. Remember, I clarified that a while back, or I thought there was thought of the Midnight going to Japan. I was not thinking of going to Japan.
Well, you were at least open to saying that you were, because I have you on tape saying it on the Arezi show in 91.
Oh, well, that's for goddamn public consumption as a work.
But what I was going to say, All Japan had those great tag teams for years. They had the Bulldogs. Even after Dynamite returned with Johnny Smith, they were still pretty good. You had the Malenkos. But if you had gone over there, if that had happened, well, if the Midnights had gone over there, it would have been Midnight Express versus Crawford and Furnace probably. And that would have been great.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would have been fun, too. That would have been fun. But no, just to clarify, while I wasn't lying to John Arezi, back then we didn't shoot on the public airwaves, and that was a shoot that the Midnight Express, if Bobby had gotten free, would have pursued Japan simply because at that point in time, with Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers were, I think, getting $4 or $5 grand a week. A couple times a year for the 3 or 4 week tours at that point. And boy, we'd love to have that match over there. So that was something that I knew I was setting up Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but I wasn't going to say that on fucking live public radio. We were on NPR at the time. But I could tell the truth. Yes, the Midnight Express will be thinking about going to Japan or whatever the case and blah, blah, blah. Does that answer your question? I wasn't going to go because they didn't do promos. And I don't know what, I don't think they would have understood why the other team wanted to get to me worse than they wanted to get to the fucking Midnight Express. I would have been extraneous in that environment.
However, with that said, to be fair, they had seen you on TV over there on World Pro Wrestling. They had seen you in the magazines with the Midnight Express for years. So everyone identified Bobby with you and Stan with you, right?
Well, yes.
You'd be letting the people down if you weren't there to stand at ringside and do
Well,
nothing.
I didn't want to cause an international incident, but it never came to that, though.
Can you imagine if Baba had said, listen, we're going to do something different. We've never done this before. I want you to get heat on me at ringside. Hit me with the racket. Give me the racket.
And he goes down and comes up bleeding.
Oh.
And
50 Yakuza guys chasing you out of the building.
I come back to the United States, I've got 2 thumbs and no fingers.
Did you see in 92? The match with Crawford and Furnas versus Kikuchi and Kabashi that everyone was raving about? I mean, it's an amazing match. It's one of the great matches of that era.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I saw it when it happened, and that's been 30 years ago, and I haven't seen it since, but I was getting all of the Japanese tapes at the time, so yes. But I'm not going to sit here and quote chapter and verse on it.
All right, free and easy this week.
What the free and easy? You've just interrogated me. Here I was gonna talk about the wildlife. Brian, don't you want to hear a wildlife update?
I think we all want to hear what's going on with the birds.
Yeah, no, here's
Cornette.
what's happened is you've been suitably chastened on Twitter. Funnily enough, isn't that a coinkydinks? On Twitter, you were suitably chastened for saying these words, I don't care about the birds. Nobody cares about the birds. That's what you said, you hard-hearted Simon Legree. Boy, I'll tell you what, you're some kind of fucking, the heart of stone. Oh, this heart of stone. I said on the program last week, I was bringing my baby birds into it. You said nobody cares about it. And you're the same person who the week before that said you had been having confrontational stare downs with the deer, the cute little loving deer in your neighborhood there in New Jersey.
My property, my rules. They're on my property. I'm the one going out on my property, which I own. They're on my property. I should turn around and go back in the house?
Yes, you should, because here's the thing. You bought that property to build a house to live in. Well, the house is yours. They can't come in without knocking and you saying come in. But when you go outside, you're in the forest. And the forest, nature, the wildlife, that supersedes white man's law, Brian Last. That's the law of the jungle. And they were here before we were, and the deer get the forest.
Well, the last thing I would want to do is defend the white man here on the show, so I'll take your side here.
All right, well, okay. I'm just telling you, when you get superseded, boy, and the law of the jungle, and that's the thing. See, I was going to tell you, there's good news.
The law of the jungle. The law of the jungle, really?
The law of the jungle out there.
All right, the law of the jungle.
Let me continue. What I was going to say is it's been a bittersweet week because, I've given you the story of the baby bird, how I was in on this since the start. I saw the bird building the nest, bringing in the little sticks and the twigs and that big long strip of the Monroe Brothers wrapping cloth that's still hanging out there. You can still see where the bird built the beautiful nest, and then the bird moved in and the bird laid the eggs, and then the little babies were born, and I've been seeing the morning and the evening feedings with the worms when the little beaks and the little fluffy nappy feathers are coming up and the cute little thin necks. And they're so sweet, and I've been every morning and every evening. Hello, birdies. Good morning, birdies. Good evening, birdies.
It just takes one of those birds to shit on your shoulder for everything to change.
No.
Just one.
They're fine birds, and they're not shitting on my, because I'm in my house and they're out in the jungle. We're each in our respective areas.
The jungle. Is that what you call the subdivision?
Well, it's the wildlife. No, I am not in a subdivision. Subdivisions are around me, but I am not in a subdivision. But anyway,
jungle.
So a couple of days ago, I get up first thing in the morning. I go to the bathroom window because I can see them closest there, and I look out and I go, "Good morning, birdies," and nobody's home. The birds have flown the nest. I've got an empty nest, Brian. And I thought, well, maybe I just couldn't see them. Maybe they're asleep, but Mama Bird will be back. But I looked again all day and in the evening and then the next day, and there's no activity. They've moved out. I had an emotional connection here. I've had a relationship with these birds. I was there since they built the house. They moved in next door to me. They had kids. We saw each other every morning and every evening, and now it actually hurt me. It left a hole in my heart that I couldn't go to the window and say good morning to the birdies anymore. Anyway,
I'm sorry.
But on the positive side, why are you laughing?
Behind every dark cloud, there is a silver lining, and today is the greatest day in the history of my life.
Oh, no, I'm not doing Jimmy Hart's. There is positive news to outweigh the heartache, because I've had heartaches by the numbers. But now, I've told you about the baby deer. We saw the baby deer the day they were born. One in the neighbor's yard and one over next to my house. And we've seen them starting to grow up. And we've talked about how they've been hanging out down under the redbud tree, right? And they're not babies anymore. Obviously, they're probably, they're 3 feet tall by now. They're getting bigger, but you can tell the young ones from the old ones because the young ones are still smaller and they're both the same size because they were both born at the same time. And they've been just hanging around in the backyard and just, like I said, under the redbud tree or over at the shady end of the house. They don't even put the Monroe brothers over anymore. The Monroes can sit there where they'll be breaking rocks and stacking stuff, and they just sit right there. Guess what I saw 2 mornings ago that shocked me to my core, Brian Last?
I don't know.
We do not have 2 baby deer in the family in the neighborhood here. We have 4 baby deer. 4 of them, all the same size, all born approximately the same time as the 2 babies that I've been seeing, along with the 2 mothers, because I saw 5 of them at one time, all together down by the creek, which is the first time, and it blew my mind. So I've been seeing, I don't know which babies I've been seeing, but I've been seeing interchangeable babies. And then again this morning, there were the 4 of them out back while one of the mothers grazed. So we've got even more babies now that I can fawn over, to make a pun. See what I did there?
Very good.
You're just not, that doesn't warm your cockles. If your cockles,
I see the deer as a pain in the ass. They're nice from a distance, but I don't want them all over my property. I don't feed them. The idea of feeding the deer is so foreign to me. The idea of going out there and encouraging them to visit again.
Well, you don't want them to go hungry. This is a more populated area
everywhere.
than it used to. Well, no, if they go out toward the road, they might get run over like Dear Abby did here a couple of seasons ago.
What do you feed them?
I don't want them out in the road area, in the subdivision area where kids can throw things at them.
What do you feed them?
And people can scare them. Well, hold on, I'm going to tell you that. But that's why I want them back in the back of mine and my neighbors' back areas where that we love them and protect them and don't want anything bad to happen to them. And I'll tell you what I feed them, and it's getting more expensive. The feed just went up $3 a bag, but there's a big 40-pound sack of feed that I get over at Feeders Supply. It's the number 27194 in their stocking system, and it's 40 pounds, but now it's $13 a bag. And I just got 6 bags, which was all they had, and I carry it down there in the wheelbarrow. But I'll have you know that, and I was excusing this for a little while because I thought, well, the mother is probably hungry. She's been, raising babies, and the babies are now, so they're eating. And also not only do the deer get to the feed, but also the squirrels and the chipmunks and the birds and etc. They have at it as well. So I'm putting a lot of extra down there. But then I also found out about 3 days ago why I've been going through so much feed, even so much more than usual. Guess what else I saw? Guess who's back?
The raccoon?
The raccoons! The raccoons have moved back in, a whole family. There goes the neighborhood. Those fat, greedy, grubby, grimy, Hoover fucking raccoons. They just go down there, and I watched the fat father and the fat mother and a little fat baby And it's just like a fucking Hoover vacuum cleaner. They go over that pile of feed and they've been persecuting me and perpetrating things against me, as everyone knows here that's been a long-time listener, for the past over 15, almost 20 years since that home invasion that they perpetrated, that I had to fucking put a deadbolt on my attic door for when that raccoon pried the screen loose off the attic fan and came in my attic and then proceeded to invade my home and shit everywhere, and the cops had to run him out. They come back for revenge. The Cunes are back. Brian, I need to call Mysterion. But anyway, my old nemesis. So now I have to figure out a way to encourage them to not eat all the other kind, deserving animals' food. This is what I go through around here. Who else do you know that has a lock on the interior of their attic door, Brian, to keep things from coming out of the attic?
You know, I really don't know. You may be the only one.
I'll tell you something else you don't know about me. Do you know that you can not only be locked out of my house, you can be locked into it?
No, I did not know that.
You need a key to get out of my doors both ways.
Who are you trying to capture?
Well, no, think about this. See, this is where Jim Cornette is so far above and so far in front of and so far beyond everybody else. I think on a whole nother level. Now, examine this, Brian Last, and think about this. I'm a person who, not anymore now, this doesn't apply anymore, but I used to travel around the country on a regular basis. I was on the road all the time. And wherever I lived, I spent a good part of my time away from it. So, here at the castle, I decided, I'll tell you what, if anybody ever breaks into this house, they're also going to have to break out. Now, think about this. Of course, I've got the burglar and the fire alarm, and it automatically calls the police or the fire department, and they call us, and there's ear-piercing sirens that'll fucking drive you to goddamn distraction, make your ears bleed, and motion sensors and glass break detectors. If anything moves inside the house larger than Harley Quinn, something's going to go off like a Roman candle. And there's those 100,000-watt LED lights I've got on every side of the house where I can turn it on at midnight and light the place up like a goddamn 4th of July parade. But just in case anybody was to counteract all of that and say they want to come in a window because they see these big, thick wooden double deadbolted doors, they want to come in a window, well, they're going to have to go back out the same way, because if I'm not home, the doors are locked from the inside too, and you need a key. And the deadbolts are extra deep in the fucking frame. So anybody that's going to try to come in and steal anything, even if they think they can beat that fucking the police response time when I'm only a minute and a half away from the police department and the fire department, and they're going to grab something, they're going to have to climb back out the same window they came through because they won't be able to get out any of the doors. Now, isn't that smart thinking, Brian Last?
I guess so. You've kind of made your life your own personal little Twilight Zone. If someone actually dares to break in to get the gold mine of wrestling collectibles, you'll never get out. You will die with those St. Louis programs in your hands. Like One-Eyed Willie looking for the treasure, or, Chester Copperpot looking for One-Eyed Willie's treasure. No, I think
Chester Copperpot.
Goonies. You ever see Goonies?
Yes. I remember that. I just hadn't heard that name in a while. I like that name. Old Chester Copperpot. He was partners with Frank Copperfield, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yes, there you go. Anyway, and here's something else that we should have mentioned when we were talking about the wildlife. How about all these? It's 4th of July is coming up. Don't be a fucking asshole and keep your goddamn fireworks to yourself. Don't shoot. I hate these people that shoot off their own fireworks in their own driveway. For fuck's sake, go to a goddamn professional fireworks exhibition. It doesn't have to be Thunder over Louisville. Go to your local city park where somebody's doing something under some type of supervision as a community thing, Or watch it on fucking television, but don't go out and teach your kids how to blow their fucking fingers off and put their eyes out, blowing off goddamn amateur fucking explosives. You'll scare the fucking dogs and the cats and the deer. The dogs and the cats and the deer hate that shit. Harley goes crazy even inside the house every 4th of July because some wise ass over in one of these subdivisions behind us thinks he's goddamn fucking an explosives expert and tries to shoot off his own celebration, and it scares all the animals. Don't be an asshole. If you live in a subdivision where you can reach out your fucking window and shake hands with the guy in the house next door, consider his dog or cat. And this is the time of year when if a dog is outside in the yard and all this shit happens, they'll dig out or they'll hurt themselves trying to get out and they'll run off and you won't be able to find them. And then you got to go and kill every single one of your neighbors that shot off fireworks. So people, for heaven's sake, just say, yay, it's the 4th of July. Let's have some hot dogs. You don't need to blow everything up and ruin everybody's goddamn day. For heaven's sake. Don't those people piss you off too?
Yeah, because I'm free and easy.
Well, here's something that's easy, but it's definitely not free, but it'll appreciate in value, folks. The big NFT sale. The first Jim Cornette NFT collectibles from the folks at Rarities with a WR. I'm beating Bret Hart by a week. They're doing Bret on July 5th, but I'm coming up to this weekend, Sunday, June 27th, the limited edition Jim Cornette NFTs will go on sale. As we've mentioned just real quickly, you can go to ProWrestlingNFT.com and get the information on what's on. I think the previews have dropped, as they say. You can see what these things look like now. There are various photos of me throughout my career. 4 levels. The level 4, limited to 500, go on sale for $75 a piece on Sunday, June 27th at noon Eastern at ProWrestlingNFT.com. Level 3 is limited to 100, goes on sale at the same time. And the top 2 levels, we've talked about this, the level 2 signature series. There are 3 in the signature series. They're all different. My autograph is embossed on the actual NFT card itself, and they are up for bid. The bidding will go until next Sunday, July 4th at 5 p.m. Eastern, and the winners of each of these get a ring-worn Jim Cornette outfit, jacket, shirt, tie, and pants, all autographed, and a handwritten letter of authenticity. That's for each of the 3, and for the Cornette face. Level 1, it's unique, one of a kind. You get an outfit with racket autographed, a handwritten letter, and a video message. That's also up for bid. And anyway, we don't know how quickly they're going to go. I would urge you to not be left out and do it as soon as you can do it. But they go on sale Sunday, June 27th, noon Eastern at ProWrestlingNFT.com. And you got to, they have the instructions. You got to get the cryptocurrency, and corny coins don't count. The cryptocurrency to bid on these things and or to purchase these things, but they have details there. I still think that I'm trying to work the bugs out of the corny coins, Brian. There's something here.
Yeah, we'll see about that, but I'm really excited about the one they have in 3 weeks after you and Brett.
Who's that?
It's Kenny McIntosh flipping off What Culture.
Oh, for heaven's sake now.
Limited to 5,000.
Don't go there.
All right.
Anyway, speaking of flipping people off, if you want someone flipped off on your behalf by me, the details are now available on the Great American Cameo Bash, which is going to happen on Sunday, July 11th. And basically, and Brian, you've heard this. You've had people bemoaning this to you also, but I'm getting a lot of people say, Jim, every time you put these things on sale, you've warned us they're going to go quickly because it's a limited number of them, but you're also chastising us and castigating us and compromising us for not giving you enough details on the things to work with in these promos on what people look like or act like that you want me to chew out. Because we're rushing, trying to get in before they all sell out. So, Brian, here's what we're doing. This time, instead of selling numbers, we're selling time. However many cameos that we sell this time on Sunday, July 11th at noon Eastern at cameo.com/Jim Cornette, they're going to be on sale for 2 hours until 2 o'clock Eastern. So that way, and we've sold out in the past, we've done 50 in around 12 minutes, and we've done it 4 times, they've all gone in under an hour. So I don't know what I'm getting myself into here, but I've cleared it with Hotchkiss.
Wait, how long are you doing this for?
2 hours instead of usually the longest it's been is about 50-something minutes. We've sold 50. And it ranged between 12 minutes and 50-something minutes. So we're leaving them up for 2 hours. That way people don't have to panic like they're calling the fire department. I urge you to compose what you want to write before the noon deadline, but when you get on the site, you can put all the information in, give me plenty of juicy details so that I can really drag somebody across the coals. But anyway, as I said, this time we're not selling by quantity, we're selling by time. Cameos for 2 hours on Sunday, July 11th at noon Eastern. What more can I do, Brian, to make myself available to the cult members?
Raise the price.
That's not making myself available to that's making myself above the cult members. I don't want them to go in debt more than a few years. I don't want them to have to give up more than 1 or 2 of their children.
See, I'm looking at it more in terms of the marketplace. If Alexa Bliss gets $600 for 16 seconds on a swing, there has to be something comparable for what you're doing.
Now, depending on what kind of swing and what the setting was, I bet you Alexa Bliss could be worth $600 on a swing, but for 16 seconds. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Cameo.
No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Cameo.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm going to give people come sit on the swing with Jim Cornette for 2 hours.
Now that you raise the price for.
Between noon and 2 o'clock Eastern. Now I'm going to have to go out and get a swing to do these things in.
And you could pay for it with the raised prices that would cover the difference.
You're a greedy, cold-hearted man, Brian Last. You send your deer away. You exile your deer.
I protect my interests.
You scoff at the birds, and you raise the price on everything.
I protect my interests. Get off my property.
Well, okay, then here's an idea. Protect your interest. What is going on up there in your neck of the woods? I have heard that your former, what was he? Was he the attorney? He wasn't the attorney general, but he was the prosecutor. But basically, your hometown hero, Rudolph Giuliani, his law license has been suspended in the state of New York for lying to the courts and saying that Trump won the election. Is this an example of the kind of legal minds that live up there in your neck of the woods, Brian? Do we need to have Stephen P. New come up and start a whole new lawyer school up there?
Oh, I would love that. That I would absolutely say yes, because then Stephen would get to hang out up here, and he's a fun guy, and I like him. But beyond that, Giuliani, the thing is, there's a lot of people that always hated him because he was always a grandstander and he was always obnoxious. And he's
an attention whore.
Yeah, attention whore. He's a serial philanderer. He married his cousin, and then his other mistress, he was having the state troopers drive her around to the Hampton. Whatever. He's not a great guy, but he was a great prosecutor. He's the one who destroyed the mafia in New York City. He did it. They hated him for years. Now they kind of like him because some of them like Trump. But anyway, but he became mayor, and he certainly cleaned up the city. And there are people, and I don't know if they're right, who will tell you, oh, I miss the old Times Square, the hookers and the drugs and it was a scary fucking place too. But there was some charm to New York City, not just being all cleaned up. And now, no one can afford to live there unless you're making just tons of money. But then after he was mayor, just slowly started losing his mind. And he's completely out of control and unhinged now. And this is not news to anyone because everyone has seen him on full display for the last 4 or 5 years behaving this way. and now it's finally starting to catch up to him, and he's only been suspended. The question is he going to be disbarred next? And I think he may be.
Well, yeah, this is the first step, but you can't. And so this is what I have to think that somebody like Stephen P. New, when they see Giuliani on television, they think the same thing when I see Dwarf Dong Sucker on my television. God, this is embarrassing to the profession I spent so much time in, right? But there are penalties. He was a lawyer. You can't just go as an attorney and present factually incorrect evidence that you are fully aware is factually incorrect to the fucking court and keep your law license. And now that this is happening and they need to disbar some more of Trump's attorneys, and they're already starting to hand sentences down, and they've I forget how many hundreds of charges they've made on the Capitol insurrection. Even if they're not going to put grandma in jail, there's some of them that are going to go to jail. They've identified connections with the Proud Boys and all the other goof groups. This needs to happen because maybe it will drum into the rest of the goofballs' minds that are still buying this sack of horse shit that the election was stolen and Trump really won it, that it wasn't fair and legal and Joe Biden's demented or whatever. No, people are going to jail for this shit, you morons. It happened in front of you and you didn't understand it because you're fucking stupid and you don't know who to believe. And now people are going to jail for it and they're suffering consequences and their law licenses are being pulled and their fucking freedoms are being taken away because they broke the fucking law. And they encouraged a lot of other people to break the fucking law too. Because they're stupid and they believe things they hear just because they want to. Not because they're actually happening. And I'm sorry that you people have such a goddamn inferiority complex that you don't want anybody smarter than Donald Trump running the country because you're scared of all the big words that Obama used to use that you didn't understand. But it might be a good idea for 40% of you all to sit the fuck back and shut the fuck up. Because if you pipe up too much, you're going to get sent to jail because you're going to be affiliated with the same bunch of sack of shit morons that perpetrated all this shit. And then you can hire Giuliani to defend you. Fuck. All righty. But you know what we all need to do, Brian? We all need to start the day off with a wonderful breakfast. I'll tell you what, I never am so cheerful as I am like I am today when I've gotten up and eaten a big old bowl of Magic Spoon. What about you?
I've been nibbling on it all morning, the frosted one. That's the best one by far.
Yeah, why don't you give some to your deer to make up for the way you've treated them?
I don't want to treat them that well, no.
Well, folks, if you need to make up with somebody for something the way that you've treated them, then I would suggest that you get them a gift box of the Magic Spoon because everybody, as you become an adult, you get a little older, you think, boy, I used to love eating cereal and sugar and junk when I was a kid, but God, it's so unhealthy now. Well, they have finally done the impossible and they have made a healthy cereal that tastes just like all the unhealthy stuff that we remember. Whether it's cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, or cinnamon, you can build your own custom bundle box at magicspoon.com. It's all got 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, and only 140 calories per serving. Although you can overindulge. I do often. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. And as I said, you can go to magicspoon.com/Jim and grab a custom bundle of cereal and try it. And it's got the 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like it for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. So, magicspoon.com/Jim. Use the code JIM, J-I-M, to get $5 off. $5 off a custom bundle. You build it. Anything you want. magicspoon.com/Jim. Use the code JIM to save that $5.
Well, Jim, before we go too much further with the show here this week, I know there is some WWE news that has been happening this week, and one of the stories is one that I only know about because people tagged me in it when they tweeted it to you a few thousand times.
Just a couple of thousand.
This female writer for WWE.
Well, and let's not be sexist at the start. Let's save that for later.
I apologize. You're right, though.
Doesn't even need to be, because these words that come out of her mouth would have been just as stupid if they'd come out of a man's mouth or a horse's mouth or anybody else's mouth. How many times have I said in a derisive and derogatory fashion, Brian, over the course of the years, these fucking comedy writers. No wonder wrestling all looks phony and stupid and the fans don't like it anymore. Because all they do is hire comedy writers that have writing credentials and graduated from major universities and wouldn't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch or a wrestling fan if it bit them on the fucking nose. That's the problem. That's been the problem ever since that outsiders were allowed in our industry to write the scripts that never before existed. What do? They give me a laboratory case here. They give me a test case for this. They notarized my entire opinion, both of the hiring practices and the people that they hire, in one fell swoop and put it out on the news for everybody to hear. I have been validated again in my own completely irrelevant fashion, where I'm turned out never to be right, ever, except all the times that I'm right. I've been validated again. They hired a comedy writer and then fired her a day later because she admitted to the world that she not only didn't have a fucking clue about anything related to professional wrestling, but she didn't even know who the goddamn champion was of the show that she was fixing to start the writing team for. So for the folks who have not been following this closely, this was I say writer, they knew, I'm going to take this off of, as a matter of fact, itrwrestling.com. We'll give them some love. Because we usually talk about PW Insider, and they're very reliable also, but this was the piece that I found, and it has the quotes. From itrwrestling.com, new WWE Monday Night Raw writer Kenise Mobley has said that she wasn't required to know anything about pro wrestling before being hired for her role writing for WWE's flagship show. Mobley is a stand-up comedian with credits on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and Chris Gethard Presents. Remember Chris Gethard? He was that lousy, rotten television personality, in air quotes, that hosted that lousy, rotten After Dark show on Vice.
That's right.
It wasn't a dark side thing. They had our friends Evan and Jason had nothing to do with it. Not the show nor the choice of host, but it was rotten. But Chris Gethard Presents, that's another credit she has to her name. But then she revealed that she had been hired to be a writer for the WWE on a podcast called Asian Not Asian. I don't know what the gimmick is, so I will not comment further on the name. But her quote was, "Yes, I have just been hired by WWE. Given the things that you know about me and my entire life and what I'm into, yes, that's surprising. Yes, also a surprise for me. They did not require me to know anything about wrestling, but I do have a background in film production and comedy writing, and they're like, perfect, come on in." So she continued on. So I'm on the Monday Night Raw team. So there's Monday Night Raw and Friday Night Smackdown, and the people I know that are on it are Bobby. His name is either Bobby Ashley or Bobby Lashley, and I really should know that. He's like this giant black guy, and he and the people who are part of his crew, I know that they call, or at least as of last year, they called themselves the Hurt Business. The Hurt Business. They wear suits, and they're like, we're cool.
Oh, my God. I'd seen this story going around. I hadn't actually read it or read the quote. That's the first time I've heard it.
There's more, but comments so far.
I mean, I'm going to look at it from the point of view of being one of the talent. Can you imagine having to have a conversation with this person about what you're doing? Nothing against this person as a person, but if you're a wrestler on this show and this is the person writing for you, how does that work? If they don't even know what you've done, who you are, why you are, who you are,
or what you're doing or what you're supposed to be doing. I'm sorry, but it's ridiculous in any endeavor for the largest company in the world to hire someone who has absolutely no knowledge. Can you have Boeing airplanes? Let's hire Jim Cornette, who not only has little knowledge whatsoever of how to fucking fly a plane or why a plane flies, but desperately wants to stay away from it. Because there's another quote here. I went on a date and this guy was like, don't you feel like he effectively said, don't you feel like you're diminishing your dignity writing for WWE? And I was like,
the answer is yes.
Well, I was like, I'm getting paid to do the thing that I've been working on for 8 years, and this is twice or 3 times what I make at my nonprofit job, so yeah, I'm going to take it. She's a comedian with a nonprofit job. She's doing the comedy thing on the side and writing thing on the side, and now she's getting paid to do the thing that she's been working on for 8 years, which is writing and comedy, but certainly not wrestling.
You see, there are 2 issues here at play. One is this is a general indictment of the WWE hiring practices and hiring process and who they hire and why they have writers at this point. And the other thing is, it says a lot about her that she thought it would be okay to say all these things in a public forum. That's nuts.
Yes, I mean, and it's an indictment of the hiring practices because they hire not only people that don't know anything about the product, but hire stupid people like this that say stupid things. She's not talking like she's fucking Ernest Hemingway, regardless. Oh, yeah, they wear suits and they're like, we're cool. Fuck anybody sitting on the fucking front row, anybody sitting in the bleachers of a wrestling event anywhere in the world, WWE or otherwise, would probably be able to come closer to coming up with something that a wrestler would want to do than this fucking girl. And she does it. She just is oblivious and proud of the fact she's oblivious because she's got another credit. I now have a credit on my roster, on my resume that I once wrote. Well, actually, no, she was once hired. But the punchline of this thing is after this hit the internet, Thursday, she got fired on Friday. I'm surprised it took that long, but I guess they keep business hours up there these days since they're a publicly traded company. Because if Vince had heard about this back in the old days, he'd have been on the phone with her 2:00 in the morning. Because you're a fucking idiot is what you are. Number one, I don't have any use for people who apply to get jobs that they do not know how to do, because that's just fucking stupid. And then you're fucking the people that are paying you, and you're fucking the people that depend on the product that you're supposed to be working on, because you don't know what you're doing. And if you're so fucking stupid that you don't know what you're doing about anything in the world to get a job, I suggest maybe learn to do something. But anyway, backing up. Not only are you stupid if you apply to do something you don't know how to do, but if you do get a job, and as she said, a job that pays 2 or 3 times what she makes at her other job, don't immediately go on a national broadcast of some description and tell people that you have no fucking idea what you're doing. She couldn't figure out she was being disrespectful to the talent. She couldn't figure out she was being disrespectful to the company. She couldn't figure out that she was getting heat on herself, even if she didn't care about being disrespectful, because she's a comedian that we've never heard of and so far has said nothing funny, just stupid. What the fuck? This is why that wrestling's in the shape that it's in, because people outside of wrestling that don't know anything about it, don't respect it, don't like it, and are just looking for a resume credit, are just welcomed in with open arms. Come on in. Well, she turned around and she went on out. As I said one time before, they gave her an inch, she took a mile, and now she got a foot out the door. But that's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. How could she not know that the fans would crucify her? Is she not a fan of anything?
She thinks it's just a show. She probably doesn't see it that way. She probably sees it as like an improv comedy show or like just some show on stage where the fans are there. If you're an outsider to wrestling and you've grown up over the last 20 years, you have no idea what wrestling is. It's just that show on TV your brother used to watch.
Sometimes these are the kind of people that I would love to just have an hour in a room with. I wouldn't want the job. I wouldn't want to do anything afterwards. I just want to spend an hour in a room with some fucking goof like this. And just see how crazy I could make them by demeaning them as much as possible with all the things that they did not know and why they were not qualified to be breathing our fucking air.
The other thing is how many of these kind of writers, people with this mindset towards wrestling, have they hired throughout the years? This is just one who talked.
Many.
Yeah.
Many. As a matter of fact, you know what? Somebody, God damn it, retweeted something with the Young Rock. I guess that's when it was, when the Young Rock was on, because, Dwayne Johnson is, I guess, still works with the writer that Heyman got in a screaming fight with.
Oh, Brian Gewirtz.
Brian Gewirtz, the comedy writer. And his big thing was comedy, and he and Heyman, I guess, got in a well-regarded screaming fight where the people in the office wished it had got physical, because that would have been a goddamn sight to see. But I would have had my money on Paul in that one, because I've seen this other clown. But even though The Rock likes him, he's one of the fucking guys that always used to do comedy bullshit. And someone had retweeted something that The Rock had said he'd mentioned to him or whatever, and on his Twitter bio, Gewirtz's, it said dabbled in the wrestling sector. They've hired 1 million of these fucking writers that don't give a shit and wanted to turn it into a comedy show, which they've done successfully. And then once the WWE started hiring writers that turned it into a comedy show, then all the other outlaw promotions and independents started copying what the big boys were doing, and they turned their shit into a comedy show, and now we got a comedy show. And that's basically where it started. So I have no respect for any of these people, and I have no respect. If you get in the fucking wrestling business, you don't intend to be in it for the rest of your life. If you have anything to do about it, then fuck you. I'm tired of all this goddamn, I'll get in wrestling for a little while and be a TV star and go make movies. Or Sable. Or these fucking comedy writers. Fuck you. That's why people used to get their legs broken. Is so this didn't happen back then. Another way that the wrestling business has regressed since the days where it was protected. Now it's like, anybody, come on in, we'll tell you everything. Before it was like, Hulk Hogan, you want to be a wrestler? Here, snap. There goes your ankle. Come back. We'll know you're serious. I liked it better the other way. Anyway, there are apparently some other releases. I'm trying to find my list. I had it here. It was right here, right next to my heart. There it is. Do you have the list of what's the matter with you?
You're just a very funny guy. No, I have a list here. I believe it's the most updated. It is from the Observer site. 14 wrestlers I have.
Oh, well, hold on. That's more than I got. 3, I got 6. I only got 10. Oh, wait a minute. But I've got tag teams here. So, baby, well, what's your list?
I got...
Because old Uncle Dave has to be on top of things since he has no friends anymore. He's got nothing to... If I can take his time up, but counting these people.
Well, for the record, the column here is written by Josh Nason on the website.
Okay, I don't know whether he has any friends or not.
I'm not trying to impugn anyone's integrity here, but here is the list, Jim. Fandango.
Yes, Fandango. He, I read, had been there for 14 years.
Wow, I'm looking at it here. It's since 2006, yeah. Wow.
What the... How can we miss you if you won't go away? And if somebody... You were a professional wrestler and somebody gave you the name Fandango and made you act like a male stripper, would you last 14 years? Wouldn't you go somewhere else to prove that you could actually be something?
I'm going to say this. I really hated his NXT stuff with Tyler Breeze. Didn't like it at all when we watched. However, I think he's actually, I mean, he's older now, and he's been there for a long time, but when they tried to give him a run or a break or whatever it was, he got over with the character, and he could actually do stuff in the ring. And he got over naturally with the fans. Remember, they all started doing his dance in the crowd. There was something there.
I don't remember.
No,
that.
it kind of worked. It kind of
wasn't watching that stuff.
And then WWE completely botched it and ruined everything with him.
No.
Yeah, but he was even cool. He did some good stuff before he was Fandango, and they just never figured out what to do with him. But he's one of those guys that you look back at and you say, really talented guy, never really reached his full potential.
But I mean, I guess, are they just...
But he's 39 years old and he's been there 16 years.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is everybody just happy now to, okay, we get a check for whatever. I'll never be anything bigger in this, in this machine, but I'm getting a check and whatever, or they don't... Nobody has the guts to do what Mick Foley did in WCW twice, wasn't it? And what other guys used to do when they weren't getting used, they weren't getting pushed, they felt like they would do better. Fuck it. Give him my notice. I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to go away and learn a new hold. I'm going to revamp myself, whatever the fuck. This guy just said, I'm going to be Fandango for 15 fucking years.
Well, the other thing too is when it comes to this list here, with other releases, we've been able to look at that list and maybe there's one or two people that you're like, wow, that is a real surprise. Like that's someone there's still money in. That's someone, AEW could grab and do something with. I have to be honest. I don't want anyone to lose their job, but you can't work someplace forever. And I looked at this list and I mean, you could tell me what you think. There was nothing here that stood out to me as being egregious. It seemed to me like, yeah, I probably would make some of these same cuts.
Well, yeah, and for some guys or girls or whatever that have only been there for a year or two or a short time or, whatever, then that to me is more, what's the word I'm searching for? More off-putting to them, or should be more off-putting to them. Shit, I didn't really get started. I didn't get a chip, but somebody that's been there for 15 years, as you said, Jesus Christ. And again, been there for 15 years. If you're the Undertaker, okay, that's great. But Fandango, that don't pass the name test. As I've mentioned before, I would give it to Vince. Said pass the name test for the WWE Championship. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus the Undertaker. Okay, that works. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret the Hitman Hart. That was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Fandango. That don't headline WrestleMania. So why wouldn't you want to be something else? Somebody better.
Well, we'll see what happens. Again, he's not a young guy. He's 39 years old, and he's been in that system for a long time. And on that topic, I'll just bring up here, also on the list.
I should have mentioned, by the way, Phil LaFon, his name, because they wanted to use his real name. I said, why can't he be Dan Crawford? Well, we're using... So I called him LaFon. The old W.C. Fields routine, the fucking porch scene from It's a Gift. I'm looking for a man named LaFong, Carl LaFong, capital L, small a, capital F, small O, small N, small G, LaFong, Carl LaFong. So anytime we were in a fucking meeting, after I'd done that routine once, and just somebody would mention the name Phil LaFon, Vince would give me the fucking side eye and arch the eyebrow like The Rock, and I would go, LaFon, capital L, small a, capital F, small O, small N, LaFon.
Vince a big W.C. Fields fan?
No, he just liked the way I did that. He'd never seen that movie in his life.
Does Vince know anything that's ever happened in any movie?
Yes, I mean, I'm stumped to call one right off the top of my head, but if you referred to something like, Gone with the Wind or The Godfather or say, shit like, yes, he's up on that type of thing, but don't get too deep in the pop culture catalog.
Well, before we get too deep here, what I was going to say before was also released is Fandango's tag team partner in the team of Breezango, Tyler Breeze, who,
good,
according to this here, I'm trying to see an age. He's been there. He's 33 years old. He's opened a wrestling school with Sean Spears, and he's been there since 2010. So again, he's been there almost 12 years. And he was called up, and then he went back to NXT, very similar to Fandango.
Well, I said good because it'll give him a chance to have another name besides Tyler Breeze and actually not be a male stripper and do something. But now he's opened up a wrestling school with Sean Spears. Shouldn't you have to go through some type of validation process before everybody just opens up a wrestling school? I don't know.
The interesting thing is how many people are opening up wrestling schools that came out of the WWE system, like years and years and years. Because that's what I'm curious. Are you teaching what you learned from your original teacher, if you had one, a Tom Pritchard, I think Tyler Breeze, a Lance Storm student? Or are you doing the WWE style?
Well, but here's the whole thing is, and I mean, there's obviously exceptions to any rule, but the best wrestling school teachers, and I'm not just talking about a program where, okay, we're going to tell you guys how to take bumps. I guess I should differentiate. When I think wrestling school, I think, okay, you can get anybody that's been in the business for 8 or 10 years to explain the proper way to take a flat back bump or execute a suplex or a slam or whatever, but there needs to be someone at the top of the wrestling training program with decades of experience at working in big companies or at a high level. Lance Storm trained Tyler Breeze. Lance Storm has...
That's his new name on the indies, from what I understand.
Tyler Breeze?
Tyler Breeze.
Shut up. Lance has been in the ring with every fucking top star. Lance has been fucking featured. Lance worked for the major companies. Lance has traveled the world, etc. Because the head of the school needs to be able to teach guys how to think about wrestling and how to mentally understand wrestling, or elsewise it's not a wrestling school, it's just a bump school. And I don't know whether
That's the problem with WWE right there.
Well, and yeah, even in the WWE system right now, is it a small college class for advanced psychology and wrestling taught by veterans, or is it a bump school for the masses to get a bunch of people that can go out and take bumps?
We see a lot of the women there, and I think as an example, you can maybe point to the women's division a little more than the men's, but we've seen women get brought up to the main roster and used, and I'm sorry, you watch them and they have in their head a routine. They know the bumps to take, but there isn't someone teaching them the psychology, teaching them what to do, why to do it, how to do it. At least I don't think so, and I don't think there's any evidence of it in what they show when you actually watch them wrestle. Not everyone, but there are certainly examples of it. And usually it's the people that were trained purely by WWE, who don't have a dad who was already there or something.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times I see modern matches where, whether it's the men or the women or anybody, where the people involved are making the faces and the motions and the actions and reacting to things in some cases that you see them imitating what they've seen other wrestlers do, but it's like I can sit in the cockpit of a plane and punch a bunch of the buttons and pull some of the levers. As long as I'm not actually flying it, it looks like I'm doing good shit, but I'm really pretending I'm just imitating shit I've seen people do, but I'm not putting in the right order to actually get the thing off the ground. Does that make sense? They're imitating certain things about wrestling that they've seen wrestlers do, but I don't think they understand. It's like the Filipino guy that they got to replace Steve Perry in Journey. When he started, at least, he was singing the songs phonetically. He didn't understand the words behind it, but he did a great job of singing the fucking notes. But anyway, continuing on with your releases.
Continuing on with WWE's releases, Tony Nese has been released.
The niece has been released. I remember that kid from one of our Ring of Honor camps, like 2009 or 10, and he was very young then. He's very small, but at the same time, he was in good shape and was a good technician. I assume he didn't get too much bigger because he was full grown then. And I would think that the reason why we haven't seen a lot of him is maybe because he, as I recall, seems to be more of a kind of worker. It needs to be in some of the independents where they have smaller guys that are more athletic.
He was one of the guys featured on that 205 Live show.
Well, there you go.
And 35 years old.
Does 205 Live still have any life to it? It's not making a lot of news.
I have to be honest, I don't even know if it still airs. I never hear anything about it. And if it went away, I never heard anything about that either. Yeah. So what does that tell you? But also, Jim, on the list, again, I've never seen this person, so I'm going to try to pronounce this phonetically. Arya Davari?
Arya Davari. That's I think, don't quote me either.
Okay.
I think it's Arya, but that's Sean Davari's brother, I believe.
That's right. Yes.
And I've always been a huge fan of Sean's. He was here in OVW for a while, worked with him in TNA. He was another guy. He had a really strong promo in TNA and could have really been moved up, and Shitstain dropped the ball on that for whatever reason. But I like Sean a lot. I've met his brother a time or two. I haven't seen him a lot, so can't comment, but he's been around for a while, and hopefully he'll pick up and carry on where he left off.
Also on the list, August Gray.
I always thought August was more green. I have no idea. Have you ever heard of that person?
I have no idea who that is, no.
I have no idea who that is.
Also on the list, the tag team of Everrise.
Remember, they looked like fish out of water. When we were watching NXT, they showed up. And I thought that it's an independent team that they've brought in to put some of these, the NXT guys over, because they didn't look physically and the whole 9 yards like that they were what the WWE would normally go for. And I get, were they on a short-term deal, or they signed them, or they just said, well, fuck it, or whatever. But weren't they no, they weren't the ones. That was another team that did that stupid backflip spot. But Everrise was, they looked like they were trying as hard as they could, but they just didn't look physically, as I recall, like most of the NXT guys as far as being athletes and in shape. Because, they also hadn't been down there with that wonderful world-class workout facility and all the trainers and etc.
Yeah, and they didn't really stand out much to me. Again, there were certain cuts on this list that I didn't go, oh, that's a surprise. I said, yeah, I can understand why. Unfortunately, they were kind of in that category for me. Let's see. Oh, apparently August Gray signed with WWE in August of 2020. And he was on 205 Live and NXT.
Well, there you go.
Also released, Kurt Stallion.
Okay.
From 205 Live. I'll just say it right here because that seems to be the
I was about to say Kurt Stallion. That sounds like the alternate name that Chris Colt would have come up with for his ring name. Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Also released, the Bollywood Boys, Sunil and Samir Singh.
Okay, I'm glad you had to say that. Have we seen them?
They used to be with Jinder Mahal when he was the champion, but we weren't really watching. But I've seen clips, and I've never really watched anything with them. I really couldn't say too much about them.
So they're headed back to Bollywood.
That's what it looks like. Also released, if I scroll up a little bit, I can see Arturo Ruas.
Help me. Who is he? Have we seen him?
Yeah, we saw him on NXT. He kind of looks like an MMA guy. And he lost a few times. So he's been released. He's gone. Also, Marina Shafir.
Okay, now they're just, I guess they're convinced that Rousey's never coming back, even though they keep saying she is, because they're getting rid of all of her girls?
That's what it is. It's just now Rousey, if she ever comes back, with Baszler, right? Everyone else is gone.
Yeah, Jessamine Duke they just released, and I guess Marina's married to Roderick Strong, isn't she? Or they're an item.
I don't know.
The marital status. I believe they are an item.
Oh, congratulations, you two.
Yeah, you crazy
nutty kids. Yeah.
I haven't actually seen her work. They haven't been featuring her. I have a hard time believing that anybody that used to train in MMA and hang out in Rousey's group would be any worse than some of the girls they've foisted off on us here lately. But nevertheless, good luck to her. Maybe she'll come back when Rousey comes back.
The next name may be the one that surprised me the most, although, again, from my sensibilities, from things I've seen, I don't disagree with it. But Killian Dane.
Well, that was a ticking clock when they teamed him up with Drake Maverick, wasn't it?
Yeah. Really.
Because that was so bad and so clowny that they just made a buffoon out of him, which is the next thing they do before they, let somebody go is pretty much make a buffoon out of you. Did he used to work as Damo in England? I think I saw that.
I don't know. I have no idea.
If that's I saw him in England. And he was a lot more impressive than he was being the reluctant tag team partner of a guy third his size. So I would think that he might be able to go out and continue doing what he was doing before, and potentially people will forget about whatever he's done here, and he might be able to get over somewhere.
It seems like a lot of these names are people that were either called up from NXT and then eventually sent back to NXT, or called back to NXT. I don't know how they look at it there. Or people from 205 Live. But the last name here, another name I don't know at all, Tino Sabatelli.
Oh, no. They closed Sabatelli's? That's my favorite Italian restaurant in Baltimore. Oh, no, that's Sabatino's.
That's actually, apparently, looking at it here, that's this guy's first name legit. Sabatino Piscatelli's his real name.
Sabatino Piscatelli. And that's right past the stop for Far Rockaway and into Piscataway.
Look at how they took his real name and turned it into this. He went from Sabatino Piscatelli to Tino Sabatelli. They literally just took the letters and moved everything around, and he kept his name almost the same.
Who makes up these names anyway? And why does anybody think they sound like actual, not only even real names, but why they should be wrestling names? I'm seeing every time that I see one of these reports that says, oh, the new talent, these are the new names they've given them in NXT. And I've never heard of anybody with any of those names.
From what I understand, a lot of the names are actually chosen by the talent. They're told, which by the way, should go into the whole independent contractor thing, but a lot of them are told, we can't use your name, or we won't use your name. They can use their name. We won't use your name. You have to change it. Come up with something you want to use. Come up with some names. And that's why, that's how Bryan Danielson ended up being Daniel Bryan. I agree.
Well, part of the problem is, and Daniel Bryan Danielson, whatever, he'd been around long enough and he knew how to kind of get around it a little bit, and he still got a fucking real human being's name.
Well, that's the thing. They used to take guys and put gimmicks on them. So you would go from being Jim Cornette to the plumber. Now they take guys and just give them other random generic names. So you would go from Jim Cornette to Frank Cornelius.
Yes, but also what you mentioned is a problem as well. Letting inexperienced green talent come up with their own name. No, you don't want to do that either. Because some of them are coming up with these fucking names. And if I took every suggestion that I'd ever heard from somebody in OVW on what their name should be or what they should be doing, good God, that would have been a crummy fucking program. And it's not the guys. If a young wrestler has potential, you want to try to protect him from making any mistakes. So you don't say, what do you want to be called, and go with it. You say, what do you want to be called? And then if you, with 25 or 30 years experience, like it, then you go with it. But if not, then you say, well, let me ask you a question. Is Dwarf Dong Sucker really your first choice or whatever? And you try to explain it. Maybe it won't fit on the marquee, or maybe it'll be hard for people to say or spell or whatever the fuck, and try to guide them to something that's palatable for them and still actually might get over somehow. Remember when Ric Flair wanted to be Ramblin' Ricky Rhodes?
Rickus Rhodes.
No, it was Ricky.
I know. I never heard that until David Crockett said it the other day in that thing. You wanted to be Rambling Rickus Rhodes. It's like, Rickus? It was always Ricky.
I don't know. But anyway, some people need to change their name. And not just because of legal entanglements. Anyway, are we done firing people here?
That is the final list of people. Like I said, I guess just to put a bow on it, I don't disagree with any if I was running that company. You know, I know someone's going to say they make so much money, they don't need to cut anyone. But at some point, you do need to cut people. You need to add people. But you do need to cut people who have been there a long time. And at a certain point, you're not going to get any more return on your dollar. I hate to look at it that way. But I'm not outraged by this. And I got to think we've seen a couple rounds of this that we're not done. This is going to keep being a trend every few weeks. We'll see.
Well, just this is proving that there's so many people. And obviously, we don't watch every program and we don't live and die and hang on every talent movement. But if there's this many people that have not made an impact that we haven't really seen, that's floating around, that's not even being exposed or used or whatever, then that means that there's too many guys on the roster. And it's not, regardless of whether the company makes all the money in the world, it's not feasible to keep, imagine a movie studio that never gets rid of in these days, in the contract days of the studios, never get rid of an actor. Sooner or later, if that happens, and you've got every actor in fucking Hollywood, or a record company that never gets rid of an artist, but keeps adding new ones, it's not possible. Everybody needs to go somewhere at some time, and usually it's the people in the lower spots and the people that aren't necessarily integral to the overall operation of the company that get released, and then they have a chance to go somewhere else, as we've mentioned a million times. New coat of paint, a new look, a new environment. Does the style of this promotion fit what you do better than the place you were at, a la Doug Furness and Phil LaFon being a whole lot better in Japan than they were in the WWF, etc.? Then you get a chance to figure that out. Everybody does not always succeed, but you ain't going to succeed if you sit in one place for 10 or 15 years doing the same fucking thing. Unless you're as far as you ever want to be, you've got to eventually shit or get off the pot, as Mama Cornette used to say, and figure these things out. Anyway, you just told me before we went on the air, Brian, and I was so surprised. I thought we had already talked about this episode on one of our shows, and I was going to give an update. And he said, well, we haven't mentioned it at all. I said, because it's been several days since we've done a show for the first time in memory. Jelly Nutella made the news again this week for getting kicked out of somewhere. Unfortunately, it wasn't a wrestling promotion or the sport of wrestling in general, but it was a school board meeting down in Florida with he was a guest star with our old friend Drake Worse, the blackface referee from NXT, who is now a QAnon supporting, Trump sucking religious fanatic that believes that the pedophiles are waiting to eat your children.
And he's going to save the world from them.
And he's going to save the world from them by making sure that they don't wear masks during a global pandemic.
I really do think if he's going to wage this battle on the front lines, he should continue to wear his referee shirt.
Yeah,
there's something very official about it. You know?
He's the arbiter of, the whole thing. But apparently what happened was, since he's got plenty of free time on his hands these days, since he got his ass handed to him and told to leave the building and never return, Drake Worse goes to another school board meeting in Florida where he can ramble on cutting a wrestling promo and fire up the fucking knuckle dragging, mouth breathing Trump suckers that come to these things because they have no life. And the school board, because it's public duty, they have to sit there and let these morons speak one after another. Well, this time, apparently Jelly Nutella dresses up as a typical Florida resident. So he tried to go for the baseball cap and the redneck clothes rather than the, New Jersey trailer dwelling meth cooker look that he normally has.
And for the record, that's not really all of Florida. That's kind of that part of Florida. Southern Florida, you don't see that so much.
Well, no. Here's the thing: you see it in
Florida's like 2 states. I mean, that's what no one ever really just comes out and says. South Florida, from like West Palm down is like 1 state, and from West Palm up is like another state.
Well, and then actually West Palm down is not a state. West Palm down is just, well, here's a little enclave, because most of the state is it's like Pennsylvania. It's fucking Philly on one side, Pittsburgh on the other side, and West Virginia in the middle.
That's a great way to look at it. That's right.
It's but anyway, there's a lot of questionable people doing questionable things in the state of Florida, wrestling promotions as well. But in this case, Jelly dresses up like the traditional Floridian that would do something like this, and he's going to go troll, as the kids say, the school board meeting and all the Trump suckers and everything. Well, the way we found out about this was he goes up and they take a picture. Somebody, I think it was either him with Drake Worse or Drake Worse with him. Somebody took the picture of the two of them, one of them, and it got put out on Twitter. And then the school board meeting made news because they had to usher Jelly out of must have been some grandmother possibly, or a paraplegic nun that had to usher physically Jelly Nutella out of the auditorium there when he started shouting and making a big scene, but you couldn't really hear because their microphones are the shit anyway, and it's cable access television, and it's only one camera, so he didn't even get on television on the fucking shot. You just hear a guy rah, 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 disturbing, but he got kicked out for yelling at a doctor or something.
Well, that got on the news. You kind of see him being ushered out on the news.
Did they get a little clip of it on the news there?
That sure. Part, not like him speaking up during the
Okay, just
thing.
Them walking him out. I'm sure Tony Khan's proud. But anyway,
I'm sure Tony Khan laughed about this.
Well, they're all childlike, so he probably did. But here's the thing. I saw the picture of Drake Worse and Jelly Nutella together, and I had to retweet that, and I said something to the effect of, well, here's our old friend Drake Worse, the, Trump sucker, and he's going to harass the school board in Florida again, and this time he's brought the teachers a jelly donut. And I tweeted the picture out. And all of Jelly's fans, all 54 of them across the world, tweeted back, said, you got trolled, you got worked, he's not really on their side, he was going down there to troll them and to work them, and you fell for it. I said, fell for what? I didn't say that Jelly was a Trump sucker. I referred to him as the jelly donut that the Trump sucker brought to the fucking school board to bribe the teachers with. However, when you look at this, who exactly is he working, and what is the purpose of the work or the troll? A person goes out in public on a regular basis doing and saying stupid things, whether it's getting in a fucking argument with fucking Enzo Amore at some fucking trash outdoor concert in Jersey, or causing a disturbance at a school board meeting in Florida, or just exposing his, face to the world and to cause people consternation. How is that working, and what is that for? When you go out and say and do stupid things to where people go, oh, that guy, I remember Lacey Von Erich was working and trolling also by going out and saying stupid things and doing stupid things where people saying, what the fuck is the matter with them? What's the point of that? I'm wondering, since we got and worked somehow.
The attention.
Is it that we're supposed to admit, okay, you got me, you really are a dumb, stupid fucker. Attention, he's periodically on national television. Shouldn't he be worried about trying to get some attention there instead of going to a school board meeting in fucking Volusia County somewhere?
Well, it is the most TV time he's had in a while, but I will say I did find it humorous that he did it. I was somewhat surprised because, again, I don't know that deathmatch world, But Drake Wirtz was a deathmatch guy, right? He was like a CZW guy.
Yeah.
And that's
back when he was on drugs before he switched addictions to religion.
And Jelly came up in that scene too, didn't he? I'm surprised that he either wouldn't know him or wouldn't recognize him, that he would sit there and take a photo with him.
He was on drugs then. Probably both of them. Actually, Drake Wirtz used to be on drugs, and Jelly's actually, I don't know whether, I think in some cases that drugs would probably mutiny if they were introduced into Jelly Nutella's system. They're like, fuck you, we're not working. We don't want to do this all the time.
All right, well, they're not the only ones not working.
They got plenty of time to go to the school board meetings. Well, Brian, I'll tell you what, I'm a big believer in statistics. I have statistics that 87% of people that physically resemble Jelly Nutella end up in a landfill underneath the Meadowlands in New Jersey. But 85% of people who play daily fantasy sports actually lose. The game is rigged against you. You're playing against thousands of other lineups, not to mention experts who've got more tools and more time. You don't stand a chance. There's no chance, Brian. But you need somebody in your corner, an entity to back you up, and that's where Stat Hero comes in. It's the first ever daily fantasy sports book that puts the player in control and winning within reach. And here's how it all works. Stat Hero shows you their lineups and dares you to beat them. It's you versus the house in a head-to-head fantasy matchup. This sounds exciting. I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. You name the stakes, winner take all. You've got the advantage because Stat Hero is showing you their lineups ahead of time, and nobody else does that. Well, they're not even kayfabing. You're in total control. Stat Hero is DFS, Daily Fantasy Sportsbook, the way it was meant to be, one-on-one, and you can play Stat Hero now and change the odds. If you go to Stat Hero, that's STAT Hero.com/JCE, sign up for free, and right now you get 3 times back on your first play. They give you a 300% match. That's unheard of. I've never heard of it. Go to stathero.com/JCE. That's stathero.com/JCE.
Well, of course, Jim, you're turning on all the listeners to Stat Hero, but I'm going to right now be a show hero and say, in the corniest fashion possible, that we should do some wrestling history right here on the show this week.
Well, yes, we should. And we have come into possession some of the financial record. You know, a lot of the times when we talk about what wrestlers used to make, their payoffs, the money they used to make, and correlate it to today's money and et cetera, people like that. Well, we've come into possession of information on one of the great wrestling cities in the country, Houston, Texas, and some of Paul Bosch's records on various years from 1979 through 1985 with his gates and the exact payoffs. And these are legitimate because this was what was reported to the Athletic Commission and et cetera. And I can testify that it's legitimate because of the 1984 events that I was a participant in. But I thought we'd go over some of the records just to show the difference, not only in the way wrestlers are paid now versus then, but also the differences in the way wrestlers were paid then, depending on who was running things. Because as most people know, Paul Bosch, along with Sam Muchnick, was one of the most respected payoff men in wrestling. They ran their own cities. They were major cities, and they did the payoffs themselves, even though they used talent from other territories. They ran their own towns, and they were noted as being great payoff guys. Another great payoff guy was Don Owens in Portland, but it wasn't for the amount of the payoffs, because Portland was always a smaller territory, but it was for the percentage that Don Owens would pay, which was bigger than most promoters. But that's the way it was supposed to work, was on a percentage. And it's fascinating because these records cover the time that Paul Bosch was doing the payoffs, but then when he made the deal with Bill Watts to become part of the Mid-South Circuit, even though he kept certain amounts of autonomy, he had his own hour-and-a-half television program in Houston. It would be an hour of the Mid-South show, but then 30 minutes stuff that was shot in Houston specifically for that market. And, still kept some independence. Watts took over the payoffs. So even though the gates went up and even the amount of the payoffs went up, as we shall see, the guys that were drawing the money were the ones that probably got penalized because Bosch used the old formulas of paying the main event and anything he considered a feature match, and everybody else was just on the card. So anyway, with that preface, does that gear people up to what we're about to talk about fairly well? Did I miss anything?
I think so. Again, Paul Bosch, legendary Houston promoter, took over from Morris Siegel in, the beginning of 1968?
Believe so, yes. Well, Paul Bosch, everybody knows he was an ex-wrestler, and he's the one who introduced Stu Hart to Helen. But by the end of the 40s, he had a serious car wreck, and it knocked him out of the ring. He was injured badly, and that was about the time that television was starting up in Houston. So Paul, since he was articulate and intelligent and educated, they made him the TV announcer, and that's the spot that he had. And as he got more involved in the promotion over the years under promoter Morris Siegel, when Siegel finally died in 1967, Paul Bosch bought the promotion. And was it already named the Gulf Athletic Club, or is that he changed the name? Whatever. The point is, he bought the promotion, and so he was really a TV announcer for almost 20 years, and then the promoter of Houston for almost 20 years.
And then it became Best of Texas Wrestling.
Yes, that's
the name
right.
of the company.
Yes. But Paul Bosch likes Sam Muchnick. Here's the thing: you can't underestimate how over Paul Bosch was in the city of Houston. And I'm not talking about over like a hero babyface wrestler. He was a well-known local businessman. You think he either hosted either the highest-rated television program or one of the highest-rated television programs in the city of Houston for almost 20 years, back when there was only 3 stations and no cable. And then he was the promoter for years after that. It was a decorated World War II veteran. He'd written several books, including one on poetry. He appeared in TV commercials for I.W. Mark's Jewelers and Gallery Furniture. I'm not using wrestling hyperbole when I say that even if you weren't a wrestling fan, if you were a citizen or resident of the city of Houston or the metropolitan area in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, you knew the name Paul Bosch. He'd charity fundraisers. He learned from all the greats like Eddie Graham, being a pillar of the community.
Yeah, there's a reason why George Bush was friends with him.
Yeah,
because when George Bush was a local politician, you had to be. I mean, I'm not saying he had to be friends with Paul Bosch, but that's how they met. You had to be friends with all the important local businessmen, and him and Paul Bosch hit it off.
Yeah, and so it's not, once again, stretching the truth to say that everybody in town knew and respected some level Paul Bosch. Even if they didn't like wrestling, they were like, oh, there's he's the businessman that makes all the money with that wrestling stuff or whatever. So, and the boys, for similar reasons, because he was honest with them and he paid the guys that drew the money, that's why we draw the parallel so much with Sam Muchnick in St. Louis. It was the same thing. People respected, even if they didn't respect the wrestling business, they respected the local wrestling because of the guy that was running it. And all the top talent wanted to work in Houston, just like they all wanted to go to St. Louis. Anyway, and the reason I picked an old one to start out with on these records we got, it's April 6, 1979. And we'll go through these payoffs, but you will also tell you what the gates were. On April 6, 1979 in Houston, they were still weekly then, right?
I think
still
so.
Running weekly on Friday nights. For years, Houston was a weekly town on Friday night at Sam Houston Coliseum. The capacity was around 12,000 people. And obviously, they weren't doing 12,000 people a week, but it was a standard weekly town, and it was the jewel of the Texas towns when Dallas and Fort Worth weren't doing the business, or San Antonio or Amarillo or Lubbock They never did business in the territory days like Houston did. And when Paul Bosch had an agreement with the Dallas office in the 70s to bring in the, Fritz von Erich's talent, their payoff for Houston on Friday night was sometimes much of what they made the rest of the week in the Dallas territory. But Dallas was short trips. In San Antonio, same thing. Those guys, their big payoff of the week was going to Houston on Fridays. And then over a period of in the early 80s when they switched to San Antonio talent, and then Paul fell out with San Antonio, business was down, and that's when they went to bi-weekly, every other week. And by the time that he made a deal with Watts to become part of the Mid-South territory, they were running every other Friday night. Anyway.
Yeah, and just to your point, this one we're talking about here, April 6, 1979, Houston is working still with the Dallas booking office. Gary Hart's on this show. Gary Hart was the booker, so he was the one actually working on the show, but also booking for the Dallas office for this show.
Right, and he's also the top heel manager.
Right, but when you talk about how much money he's making, that plays into it.
Yes, we will. And as a matter of fact, fire up, while I'm saying this, fire up the inflation calculator that we go to so often. But because I want to get a couple of figures, on April 6, 1979, in Houston, Texas, they grossed $12,725 at the gate. They had, I'm trying to read it, 3,704 fans paid and 63 comps. And
that's a $47,000 gate.
That's a $47,000 gate in today's money for something they did every Friday night. The main event was the Sheik versus Mark Lewin. They both got paid the same thing, $630 each, but the Sheik also got his $254 trans reimbursed because he flew in from wherever he flew in from. Lewin was in the Texas territory.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say $630 on 1275 or 12725. What's 630 come out to these days?
$2,335.99.
Okay, so the main event, the Sheik and Mark Lewin, on a $12,000 gate that equaled $47,000, they both got the equivalent of about $2,300 apiece in today's money. The semifinal was Greg Valentine against Tiger Conway Jr., and they each got $305, with Valentine being reimbursed $260 for his trans also. So those were the two feature matches. Everybody else on the card, the spoiler, Jose Lothario got $150. Mike the Biggin, who was a giant, 600-pound guy on the flavor of Haystacks Calhoun and etc. that didn't last long. Mike the Biggin, Colosso Colasetti, the luchador, Gino Hernandez, Bill White, Bull Ramos, and Bob Marcus all got $110 for being in the preliminary matches. Bronco Lubitsch and Danny McShane were the referees. They each got $110, but Bronco got a $25 bonus because is Bronco, and he was in the Dallas office and probably handled something. Johnny Valentine, who was retired at this time because of the plane crash, but was still a legend in Texas, appeared on the show. We don't have the card here the way it was advertised, but he appeared on the show in some fashion and made $305. So I have to think that he possibly was in Tiger Conway Jr.'s corner because it was the same payoff as the semifinal match. You feel me? Or
against Greg?
Wait. Would Johnny Valentine have been see, here's the thing. Would he have been a heel then? Or would it have been a deal they worked,
I've never heard about Valentine against Valentine as a feud.
Okay, yeah. So he was in Greg Valentine's corner.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's why they brought Valentine in, whatever the fuck. But I was just thinking they would use Valentine as a babyface at that point. Anyway, nevertheless, the only other person on the payoff list, Gary Hart, who, as you mentioned, was the booker and the top heel manager, got $630, which was the same payoff as the Sheik and Mark Lewin, which I'm sure Gary was managing in that match, possibly Mark Lewin, because they spent a lot of time together. So he got a main event payoff as a manager in the main event match, which I would later on, but also since he was the booker, We don't know whether that was just because he was in the main event or whether, and honestly, I bet you that was just because he was in the main event, because Paul Bosch would not have been paying Gary Hart's booker, or right. Fritz von Erich's booker.
Fritz would have been paying him, yeah. And also on this sheet, we see 10% booking fee, which of course is going to Dallas to cover that.
Which was $1,234.34. But later on, we will see that Bill Dundee, as Bill Watts' booker, was getting payoffs in Houston because it was Watts doing the payoffs.
And by the way, the booking fee for Dallas translates today to $4,500 and change.
And that basically, when an office made arrangements, Dallas-Fort Worth was a booking office. Houston was a wrestling office. They did not book talent out. They booked Dallas-Fort Worth talent. So you would send 10% of your your net gate back to the office, the booking office that you got the talent from. So they were, every time that Houston ran and did 12 grand, they'd make $4,500 in today's money just for sending the talent down to get paid, and they didn't have the responsibility of paying them that night either. So it was a nice deal. But anyway, let's go one more in 1979 and see what the main event is. Okay, the next one we have April 13th. That's the next week.
That's right.
Jose Lothario against Mark Lewin in the main event. The gross receipts were down because there was no Sheik. $10,311 with a net of $10,001 on 2,934 tickets sold. The main event here, we can easily tell, Jose Lothario against Mark Lewin. They got $513 each on a $10,000 house. What's that translate to today?
513 would be $1,900.
So basically, from 1979, we're going almost 4 times. So on about a $40,000 house, they got an equivalent of about a $2,000 payoff. The semifinal was David Von Erich and Greg Valentine that got $250 apiece. And then everybody else, Bob Marcus, The Spoiler, Colasetti, Gino Hernandez, Tiger Conway Jr., Carlos Rodriguez, Bill White, Bull Ramos, Danny McShane, and Bronco Lubitsch got $100, except for Gary Hart and Johnny Valentine. Apparently Valentine was back. He got $250 this time, and Gary Hart was managing Lewin and got $513 in the main event. Now, I just say one. We got one more from 1979, and the house was down again, April 20th. They were down a bit again. Only 2,087 tickets sold, $8,666 gross, $8,406 net. And Wahoo McDaniel and The Spoiler were in the main event and got $605 apiece. So on a less than equivalent to $40,000 house in today's environment, Wahoo and The Spoiler got the equivalent of over $2,000 each. Everybody else was down at 110 except for Jose Lothario and the Brute. That was Brute Bernard, right? Or was that Bugsy?
I think it was Bugsy.
It was Bugsy. They got $300 apiece. And Gary Hart was not happy because since Mark Lewin was moved down into a preliminary match, they both got $110. And I guarantee you, Gary didn't appreciate that. Anyway, that's 1979. That's when they were a weekly town. The gates weren't off the charts, but it was not a hot period for business. But the payoff for the main event and the semifinal match, as they used to say, was, we're all very healthy. So where you want to go next, Brian? You want to go to 1982 for a second? See what was going on? That was the Southwest Championship Wrestling Talent era, was it not?
It was Southwest into Mid-South, and there is a little bit of a period where Paul's using both talent before he completely stops using Southwest, and they had a lot of issues as a company going forward, especially a lot with bills they owed. Paul would start working with Bill Watts. Let's look at one from 82, but I really think what's interesting would be looking at the payoffs in 83, right before Watts panicked. I mean, really, when you think about it, Watts said, oh shit, this isn't working. What can I do? And he got Rock and Roll to Midnight and everyone else.
Okay, well, hold on a second here, and let's just look at one of these for examples. Because things had changed by 1982 in that this is Southwest Championship. This is July 30th, 1982. They only had 2,500 people paid and 61 comps, but they had raised prices by then. They did a gross of $18,277. But in this case, Paul has changed his payoff strategy somewhat because the payoffs up and down the card are healthier, and I will illustrate. Nick Bockwinkel and Dick Slater was the main event. They both got $700 each. I'm sure it was an AWA title match. They got $700 each, and then Bockwinkel got $130 in trance. Bockwinkel, as we know, had bought into the Houston office, or was about to at the
right around this period of time.
Right about that
it was all happening in 82, right here with him and Watts and everything.
And Nick wanted to own a piece of he loved the town so much and loved the way that the business was run so much and that the people enjoyed the matches so much that he wanted to retire there and own, part of the town and potentially take over from Paul. And it didn't work out. But anyway, but as we mentioned before, the semifinal match is Ricky Morton and Ken Lucas in a tag team title match against Tully Blanchard and Gino Hernandez. They got $500 each. But then the Mongolian Stomper and Grand Apollo was another figured-in match. They did $450 each. Sherry Martel and Judy Martin, $280 apiece. Frank Monty, Bob Sweetan, Ron Cheatham, Tiger Conway Jr., $250. Only the referees were at $100. And Don Carson made $550 because he got plus $100 for some reason. I think he was managing the Mongolian Stomper at the time. So that would have been in the Stomper Apollo match. But that is up and down the card more money than he was paying the preliminary guys in years previous. And Peter Burkholt's got $250.
What's interesting, too, is the 10% booking fee here. So it's not going to Fritz in Dallas.
It's going to San Antonio, and that was $1,772.86. So, again, for the guys in San Antonio, I got to be honest with you, with the rest of the San Antonio territory, Morton and Lucas, Gino and Tully probably made most of their weekly check on one night in Houston.
And it's almost $5,000 in today's money going back to Joe Blanchard.
Yeah, so that was a good deal. The problem was Paul Bosch sold 2,500 tickets this night, and that's not a good deal. So if you go ahead to, let's see, to the end of the year.
But, what I was going to say, though,
go ahead.
One of the interesting things, kind of what I said before about him working with Southwest, but starting to work with Watts, even earlier, got to remember, one of the things that makes the whole Watts deal possible is that JYD breaks out in Houston, separate from Mid-South, as a star. He gets over massively in Houston, main events against Bockwinkel, and then he did the deal with Watts. So that helped the matter.
I just got to bring this one up. August 6, 1982. This was still with the Southwest talent. The main event apparently was the Mongolian Stomper and in some fashion, the Mongolian Stomper and Bob Sweetan and Gino and Tully, they all got $250 apiece, except Tully got bonused $100. But Mil Mascaras is in there. He got $700, $200 plus $250 plus 200 trans plus a $250 bonus. So even then, they knew they had to give him at least whatever, or he was going to get pissed and not come back. But the house was $1,791 paid for $9,436. So then you go to the next month, October, they did $2,029 paid and a little over $10,000. Still with Southwest talent. And then October the 8th, you see Junkyard Dog. on the card. And now all of a sudden, 2,677 paid, $14,000 house. JYD and let's see, I'm trying to read the small print. JYD made $350 plus $185 trans. Tony Atlas the same. Gino and Tully the same. So they probably a tag match. But that's at the point in time, as you said, JYD comes in and starts getting over. It's still the Southwest talent, although they had Terry Gordy on this show.
No, by this point, he was already over. By this point, October 82, he was already established in Houston. So you look up and down this card, and it's all Southwest guys, and then it's him. And by the way, Tony Atlas jumps to Mid-South right after this.
Yeah.
Tully finishes up, several months after this, shows up in Mid-South again. But this is kind of the end of the Southwest Paul Bosch relationship, but it does kind of go on. It trickles on for a little longer after people think it's over.
But this one is an interesting one. And this pisses me off. Because apparently Paul still had some fucking say in the payoffs on December 26, 1982. They did 5,671 paid, 50 comps, and did a $50,000 house. So they've raised the prices, plus they're drawing more people. The booking fee that went still, now here I'm trying to figure out, there's a mixture in here because Paul started taking control of his town back, and like you said, bringing in Dog from Mid-South. He started bringing in outside talent instead of just the San Antonio guys. This is a little mixture of everybody, but there's a lot of Mid-South going on here by now. And
it's mostly Mid-South. I mean, it's
mostly Mid-South.
Predominantly Mid-South.
On a $50,000 house, Nick Bockwinkel, Tony Atlas, Stagger Lee, Hacksaw Duggan, and Kamala, Chavo Guerrero, and Gino Hernandez all got $1,000. And that would be what now from 1982 on our inflation calculator?
I'll get that in a second, just so you know. The gate, though, the $50,000 gate today would be $139,000.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, they've got the Mid-South talent coming in, the people that I just mentioned. Plus on this card was Ted DiBiase, Tiger Conway Jr., Matt Bourne, Dusty Rhodes, who got $250 plus a $250 bonus. Because when you have a name come in, regardless of what their position on the card is, you give them the bonus or you're going to hear about it.
And he was booked a lot on those shows, not just because he was a big star as Dusty Rhodes, but because, from what I was told by Peter Burkholz, he wanted to go back to Houston a lot because his mom lived there.
Yeah.
So he would visit his mom and work for Paul Bosch.
Mr. Wrestling 2, the Grappler number 2, Skandor Akbar. Gersler Smith, Girzler, Gersler Smith, Grizzly Smith got $250. Peter Burkholz was down $400. Tom Renesto got to it. Was he booking San Antonio at the time?
Tom Renesto Jr.
Oh, was that Tom Renesto Jr.?
Has to be Jr. He was working undercard, yeah.
Tim Talltree.
No, that's his brother. That's his brother.
That was the brother. Then Tom Renesto Jr. was
the one who looked like Ron Jeremy.
Tom Branch. One that looked like Ron Jeremy. Okay. Anyway, so the point being, and the 10% booking fee back to Mid-South now, I assume, was $4,850, which translates to what, probably almost $15,000 at this point now.
But there's something interesting at the bottom of the left-hand column. It says trans to Mid-South. Or am I reading that wrong?
I would imagine, I would imagine that the Mid-South office bought the plane tickets for their guys.
You flew into Houston?
Sometimes here's the thing. We didn't, but some guys did, especially if they'd been in, fucking Biloxi, Mississippi the night before, or up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they're going to be up somewhere at the other end the next night, because Houston was just being added. Was Oak City and Tulsa just starting to become a thing at that point? He just got that from McGurk. So they still hadn't figured out their routing yet. And it was even worse. Oh, guys told me in the late 70s, early 80s, at one point, you might be booked in New Orleans one day, and that's when New Orleans necessarily might not have been doing great business, and then the far end of Oklahoma the next day. So there was, that's probably what that was. I don't see, and I don't know. But anyway, so that's by December 1982. Now you want to go to the end of 1983. is what you want to do, right? Because now we really get interesting. Because the same thing happened. Through 1983, the towns were up, the new talent, the influx, etc. But then all of a sudden, let's look here, for example, in May.
Around the same period of time that Bill Watts' promotion started hitting a wall, because, you go back and you watch those TVs, everyone became, not a Bill Watts clone, but everyone became a giant, big guy.
Yeah.
Wrestling that same style. And you could tell by looking at these that it affected Houston just as much, maybe more in some cases, than it did the Mid-South territory.
Yeah, because, Houston was used to the best, and what an atmosphere that building was. And when you had them, you had them. It was an incredible wrestling atmosphere. But they demanded, big shows and top talent. And you can look here real briefly in April, JYD made $650, or $850, I'm sorry. It was Kamala made $650. Wrestling 2, $550. Tiger Conway, $550. Super Destroyer and Mass Superstar, $550 each. Chavo, Hacksaw, $500. They're still doing business there. But then, as you mentioned, over the next few months, things hit a wall and it got slow. November 4th, 1983, the gate is not on this sheet, but JYD, Butch Reed, Hacksaw Duggan, Jim Neidhart, Magnum TA, Nikolai Volkov all made $200. They were the highest paid guys. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Bobby Duncombe, Crusher Darso, The Missing Link, Jerry and Marty Oates, Doug Vines, Art Cruz, Lanny Poffo, Tom Stanton, Nick Kozak, all made between $100 and $150. Also, Ricky Ferrara, the referee, Tony Torres, Don Serrano. Grizzly Smith made $175. Ernie Ladd was booking then. He made $200. He was the Mid-South booker. $200 for the booker on this show. So I don't have the gate, but it had to be abysmal.
That tells you the story. No, this tells you the story right here about where Watts' business was. Because if this is what it was in Houston, the $200 main event payday, that's atrocious. So this is November 4th. When did Watts come to Memphis to look at talent?
Before Thanksgiving, somewhere around the second week of November. Remember, we've tried to, well, as a matter of fact, I remember the date of the time he was in Memphis. Hold on, I'm reaching.
Because that's what's interesting, is because you're kind of seeing with these numbers here, the business collapse. And it could go one of two ways. It can keep going down, or you could somehow find a way to repair it. And not only did they do that, but they did record business the next year, coming off these atrocious numbers.
Okay, that was November 6th, we just said?
November 4th.
November 4th? Okay, the date that he came to, wait a minute, I'm trying to turn the page, to Memphis was, goddammit, where is it? Ah, yes, was November 14th. So there you go.
10 days later.
10 days later. And then there's another November card we have here. Wait a minute. Or is that, that's December.
We have November 20th as well.
No, we have November 20th. Okay, because this has something very interesting that I just saw. The house was better. They got back up to $26,000. And JYD and Nikolai Volkov made $500 apiece, and some of the other guys made between $250 and $300. Dr. Death, Butch Reed, Jim Neidhart. Black Gordman was on the show. Jose Lothario, Hacksaw Duggan, Jake the Snake Roberts. He got paid... he got paid $250 and a $50 bonus, and his trance was $150, and he took a $500 draw. So basically, he just got everything. But Lanny Poffo, Tom Lentz, Jeff Sword, Rick Rude when he was a rookie, Larry Higgins. Also, down at the bottom, Bill Dundee was put down for a $100 payoff. That means that after Watts came to Memphis, saw the talent.
Well, let me just jump in and clarify. This is December 16th, the one you're doing right now.
Oh, wait, I am? Did I miss one?
Yes.
Oh, shit. Okay, I missed one. But anyway, he had come in and seen the talent, and then, as we've talked about, he and Jared had talked about Dundee, and then he brought Dundee down before he officially took the book and paid him $100 just to have him see one of the major towns, or some of the major towns, because I think Dundee spent a week down there. But anyway.
But what's it like for you now? I mean, before we get to 84, looking back now, because you didn't know these figures before you got there. You may have heard guys say, oh, I got paid like shit. You never actually saw the breakdowns like this. Knowing what you came into, I mean, what do you think now? I mean, was it a bigger risk than you realized going to Mid-South, or?
Fuck, are you out of your mind? My last check for working 6 full days in Memphis was $300. And my last actual check from Memphis was $60 because it was only one day on it. So no, you're going to make $200 in one night, Cornette. Holy shit. So it wasn't, no.
Because that's the thing I want you to be able to kind of put some perspective on for the listeners is just when we hear this, when we hear December 82, JYD and Nikolai get 500 each in the main event, is that good? Should it be better when we say the business is down and that's what they got, and this is Christmas time? You know, what should it be and what was it in other areas? And when you say you got 60 in Memphis, that kind of puts it in perspective.
Well, yeah, that's because I wasn't being used. See, here's the thing. There was no chance that I was going to make less money in the spot that they gave me in Mid-South with the Midnight Express than I was in Memphis, because I was the lowest paid guy in Memphis because I was not important. But I knew I was going to make more money automatically, instantly. Watts had said, we'll make, each of you will make between 50 and 100 grand in a year. That was 50 if we sucked and 100 grand if we set records, and we made the 100. But the risk for me was that I am going to flop, or we're going to flop, or we ain't going to get over, and they're going to cut this thing off, and then I got to try to go back to Memphis if they'll take me. That was the risk. I knew I was going to make more money for some period of time than I'd ever made before. Our first check in Louisiana was the biggest check I'd had in the wrestling business when we were just doing preliminary matches, getting wins. It was over $1,000. And then the next week was 800 and something, and he bonused us $200 to get us over the 1,000.
Well, Jim, then I was going to say the next one we have here from January 13th, 84, you're now on the card.
Well, yes, and that's why I'm saying you're going to see why I was pissed at a couple of these payoffs here in a second, because now that Watts has taken them over, remember on a $50,000 house, those guys got like $1,000 and $1,500, right?
Right.
Well, keep that in mind. Our first night in Houston actually was the end of December of 83. We were on the undercard of Bockwinkel and Dog in another AWA title match. And I remember, hold on, I'll get the house, but I'm pretty sure it was $29,000. But at the same time, that was, except for Memphis or Lexington, Kentucky, that was one of the biggest houses I'd ever been on. December 30th. We beat Lanny Poffo and Rick Rude. The house was 29 grand. So already I'm like, okay, shit, Jesus, here you go. But it would get better and fairly quickly. And you said the date on this one, the first January one, is what?
January 13th, 1984.
Okay, January 13th, they reported to the talent a $42,000 house, and son of a gun, $42,294. And the main event was Dog and Duggan against the Russians, Darso and Nikolai Volkov, and they got $700 each. And then Tito Santana, Butch Reed, Jose Lothario, and Black Gordman got $500 because they were underneath. Lanny Poffo and El Bracero, that's who we beat in a underneath tag match. We all got $250 each because they paid to the spot on the card in that instance.
So if I can stop you real quick, El Bracero, and we've seen this on other ones, but let's let the listeners know how this works. Trans due $200. What does that mean?
Well, it cost him $200 because see, that's the thing. El Bracero was not working the Mid-South territory. But he was a name in Houston because he was Hispanic. That's the same reason that Black Gordman was, that same reason Jose Lothario. Those guys were popular and over for the Hispanic population in Memphis, but they had to bring them in. So Jose and Gordman got 90 bucks France. In Houston, I should say. Jose and Gordman got 90 bucks. El Bracero got 200 bucks. It just wherever the Tito Santana got $409. He must have flown in from somewhere far away.
Northeast.
But the 90 bucks was probably here. Turn in your gas receipts because Jose lived in San Antonio, whatever. But since they were just being booked on that show and not working the entire territory, they got trans. And everybody else on this was in the $175 to $200 category. Referee Joel Armstrong, a.k.a. Joel Watts, got $200. Grizzly Smith got $250. Peter Burkholz, Paul Bosch's nephew, was in the office, got $250. Bill Dundee got $300. I don't know what deal that Watts made with Dundee to be the booker, but I would assume he paid him a payoff on each one of the towns, because that way, whatever you had committed to, you could take it out in increments out of the towns, and you kind of just spread out instead of handing a guy a check for $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever. You laid it off on all the towns. But I don't know what Dundee made to book Mid-South, but I have a pretty good feeling that we were the highest paid guys over the year in the company because we were there all year and we were on top most of the time. So he had to, and he definitely made more than us, because I don't think there's ever been a booker in a successful territory that was not making more than the top talent, unless the top talent was also an owner of the promotion. So Dundee probably made $125 to $150,000 for that year of booking in '84. What does that work out to these days?
It pays off not to get along with Jerry, you see? How much did you say? 150?
Let's say $125,000 to be, on the safe side.
1984, that would be $323,800 and change.
Yeah, I would say that would be light with the business that they did. But anyway, the next 1984, you give me the dates. I'm just clicking ahead.
February 24th, 1984.
Okay, February 24th. We were against the Magnum TA and Mr. Wrestling 2 in a non-title match, and they reported $58,500, and son of a bitch, $58,457. Paul Bosch was an honest man.
When you say they reported, what are you referencing?
Well, here's the thing. Everybody knew, all the boys knew that they were getting paid supposedly on the house. That was the question that was asked whenever toward the end of the night or at the end of the night, whenever whoever was checking up or running the town came in, everybody would say, "Hey, Paul or Bill or Grizzly, what's the house?" Now, when you ask that question, the promoters, the wrestlers, everybody says, "Oh, there's 500 people out there." Or, there's 600 people, there's 1,000 people, or whatever. We didn't give two goddamn fucks how many people were out there. What was the house? What was the gate? $58,000. Okay. Now we know last time, if we got X dollars on a $45,000 house, we're in the same position, but it's up, our pay will be up. You reported that whether there was one person or 10,000 people, you reported the gate figure to the boys, and that's, and now nobody even asks anymore because they all get the same thing regardless. But there was never a wrestling show that I was at that somebody in the locker room didn't ask the promoter or whoever was checking up what the fucking house was, unless they never came in to be asked that. That was the most asked question in wrestling. And that's why I've got all this information. And what are they going to say? Well, we don't want to tell you. Oh, you don't want to tell me? What the fuck are you trying to pull? Right? So if anything, in those days, the houses that the promoters reported to the talent, in some cases, and that's why I'm so surprised here, they're nailing it right on the head, they would underreport, if anything, because if they told you what it really was, you'd expect more money. So when you get honesty, you remark over it.
But when you're referencing them reporting it, what are you talking about? Did you write down what you were told at the time? I mean, was it on the envelope? Okay, that's
no. I had my book in my bag. Hey, fucking Paul, what's the house? 58 grand. I'm writing that one down. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the guys didn't write it down. They just asked the question and wanted to know, but no, I wrote the shit down. Anyway, on that, I just mentioned our first match with 2 and TA. It did $58,500. And boy, this ink has worn. But basically, Neidhart and Butch, that's when they had done the switch and they were on top in a single match. They got $800 apiece. Me, Dennis, Bobby Eaton, Wrestling 2, and Magnum got $700 each. Dog was against Masayo Ito.
Ooh. Oh, that match. I can only imagine.
Yeah. They both got $600, but Dog got a $250 bonus, and then he took a $500 draw. So something was going on there, but Dog needs money. Dog gets money. But anyway, and then the rest of the guys, but they're down now again. Grizzly Smith, $400, Bill Dundee, $600, Jack Curtis, $300.
What would his role have been there in Houston?
I don't know why he was in Houston that particular night. He didn't always come to Houston, but he was overseeing the merchandise tables and as well as doing local promotion on, some of the towns. So I don't know why he was there in Houston that night specifically all these years later. But anyway, as you can see, the houses have come up, the payoffs are coming up, but they're more spread out now. It's no longer Paul Bosch doing the Sam Muchnick thing and the preliminary guys get whatever they get. Watts is making the top guys happy, but he's breaking up the underneath guys, smaller payoffs in the smaller towns with bigger payoffs from Houston because it keeps them happier.
There's also more people on the shows than there were in 79.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing, that's Paul was still back in the days when he was, bringing in Dallas guys and booking his own cards in some cases. He kept it to the standard 3 preliminaries, maybe a feature and a good main event or 2 main events on a big show. But Watts had a bigger roster and was going with the bigger package shows that he learned from Eddie Graham. So not only did he have more talent in the territory, but he had more meaningful talent instead of a slew of interchangeable preliminary guys. He always had guys he could move up and down. There were even stars in the preliminaries. And what's the next date here?
April 6th.
April 6th was the week or the show before the last Stampede. And they reported $54,000, and I don't see a gate on this one, but I believe it. And that's where the Midnight Express was against the Bruise Brothers from Memphis. It was supposed to be Pork Chop Cash and Dream Machine, and that's when Dream broke his ankle. God damn it, I hated that so bad because Dream would have not only would Dream have loved that, but he could have made his biggest checks in the history of his time in the business in Mid-South if he'd got that opportunity, because they would have brought the Bruise Brothers in. They loved that. They may have been our next program after the Rock and Roll instead of the Fantastics, because the Bruise Brothers got over, or at least Pork Chop and Dundee took Dream's place, but Pork Chop got over with the people in Houston and New Orleans, and Dream would have. But anyway, we all got $500 apiece. The main event, I believe, was some type of 6-man with 2 TA and Terry Taylor against Duggan, Khrushchev, and Nikolai. Or not Duggan. Goddamn, why they all got $700?
No, maybe no. I think it would be TA versus 2 and Taylor and Duggan versus the Russians.
That's right. TA and 2 had turned on it. TA versus 2, $700, and then Taylor and Duggan against the Russians, $700. Those were the top matches. Then the Rock and Roll was against Butch Reed and Buddy Landell, and they all got $400. Dundee got 5 plus 3, so 8 on this show. But they're starting to take care of Dundee because he's producing business. But anyway.
Who's Eric Weingroff?
George Weingroff's little brother. He was a referee.
He was a referee. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because he's at the bottom there. Yeah.
Funny spot. One night, Bobby Eaton has a headlock on somebody that he's working with, and he's trying to call a spot, but he doesn't want to just lean down and talk to the guy in the headlock. So he would talk to the referee. You could see a wrestler talking to the referee, wouldn't think anything of it. But he's got the guy in the headlock, and he asks the referee, Eric Weingroff, he says, "Can you do a leapfrog?" But Eric says, "I think so." Anyway, so now we come to the next
Stampede.
date. The last Stampede. This is where I'm fucking pissed. Because remember on that, what was it, $50,000 house in 1982, and on that, or at that, even the $12,000 house in 1979, those guys, the main event made $1,000, whatever the fuck it was. Well, here we go. The all-time record gate in the history of wrestling in the Sam Houston Coliseum. We did $102,000 and turned, they never knew how much, 2,000 to 4,000. The cops could never agree, but the line was around the fucking building when we got there. And we were on top, and we made $1,500 a piece. By Paul Bosch's math from 1979, we should have made like $8,000. But okay, so what's from 1984? What's $100,000 and what's $1,500? And while you look that up, I will say that Cowboy Bill Watts, Stagger Lee, Dennis Condrey, Bobby Eaton, Jim Cornette, and Hacksaw Duggan and Crusher Khrushchev, who were in the semifinal, all got $1,500. And all respect to my buddy Hacksaw, and I love Barry Darsow. But we drew that fucking house. They could add reruns of Mighty Mouse cartoons on the undercard. It would have still been the same house. This is where I get pissed. Magnum and Wrestling 2 got 1,000. And we worked twice that night because we also worked with a return match with Pork Chop and Dundee. And they got $600 a piece. So we got $1,500 for drawing the record gate and working twice.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah, exactly. The Rock and Roll, all those other guys got $600-700. Hector, Dundee got $1,200, $600 for working, $600 for fucking booking. Grizzly Smith, Boyd Pierce got $250 that night for ring announcing. But anyway, what are those figures? $100,000 house in 1984?
$100,000 house, $259,000.
In a town that we had run 9 days previous and would come back to a week later.
1,500 is $38.86.
So we barely got $4,000 in today's money for setting that record. And honestly, to have paid anybody else on that card the same thing as we got was highway robbery. But everybody's now making more money, and you see what we've talked about this. The guys on the full-time roster, sometimes Pat Rose, or whether it was on this card, well, the Russian Invader, Jerry Novak, bless him, he made $400. El Bracero, John King made $300. Tony Torres made $300. Joe Savoldi made $300. The guys that were in the opening matches, jerking the curtains in our hot periods in 1984, were making checks of $1,000, $1,200 a week, which is now somewhere around $3,000. And they were on the opening match, and they were learning the business from one of the most well-regulated territories in the whole sport. So that's why anytime anybody could get booked in Mid-South at that point, even just for a couple months, just to get the experience, that's what they do.
Hey, can I ask you about one that I'm interested in?
Yes.
September 9th, 1984.
Hold on here. I've got to go back to where it all began. Okay, September 9th. Well, wait a minute. Hold on here. Was there one other one I wanted to look at? We skipped through May, June. Was there another big...
You and the Rock and Roll.
June 8th. Well, I'm just saying, was June 8th the loser leave? We'll come back to it. Anyway, September 9th, 1984. I know what you're going for here. And if my mouse would work, it would actually come up.
And once again, looking at these, it's amazing just how many people were being paid from the show compared to, I don't know, what was it, 12, 14 people in 1979? Yeah. It's a lot of people here.
Yeah, well, and, the money went up, the gates went up, but also the pay and the expenses went up. And I'm sure that was a cause of consternation sometimes between Watts and Paul. But that's, Watts was running a territory where he had so many major markets that they couldn't even run weekly towns anymore. They had to run them every 2 weeks or once a month. So he had to keep guys in the territory, and you couldn't run a spot show on the same night as Houston. They demanded the top talent. But anyway, September 9th was when they decided to shave my head for the second time that week. I lost my hair in New Orleans, but it didn't really draw that well because New Orleans was down. It was after a dome show. It was Labor Day weekend. There was an all-night gas station open. So we did the goddamn hair match and only drew 25 grand in New Orleans. About 4,000 people. So fuck. So Dundee, I saw on the booking sheet, he booked my hair to be at stake in another match between Hercules Hernandez, who I was managing also, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan in Houston. And I said, how the fuck? Dundee had called Memphis and he got Jim Jameson, one of the, job guys that were local there in Memphis that would do TV on Saturday mornings. It was the biggest spot Jim ever got in the wrestling business. He got a plane ticket for Jim Jameson to fly down from Memphis, $394 as I see now, and be my cousin Percy Cornette and get his head shaved. And the people bought it and they loved it. And Jim got he told me he was getting $500, but he got $250 for that to fly down to Houston and shave his head. But
hold on.
Go ahead. What?
$394 for trans. How much would it have cost to fly from Memphis to Houston?
$394 and back.
In 84?
Memphis and Houston back in those days wasn't a highly traveled fucking, maybe that included his hotel. I don't know. They weren't going to make him go in his pocket to come down and shave his head. But yeah, plane tickets. I think our first plane tickets to go from Tennessee to Shreveport, Louisiana were somewhere around $300 a piece, even back then. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, air travel did not really increase. The first class fees did, but air travel expense has diminished over the years in a lot of cases. You always figured three or four. Well, when we would try to fly before we quit doing that, because there was only commuter planes from Alexandria, Louisiana to Oklahoma City and Tulsa, it was a $300 ticket in 1984 on a commuter plane. Anyway, point is, in this particular situation, I got screwed because I got the same as the Midnight Express did for working with the Fantastics, $500 a piece. I got a $250 bonus for being involved in the Duggan Hernandez match, but Duggan and Hernandez got $1,000 a piece. So I was in the middle there somewhere. And they had another top match with Jose Lothario and Butch Reed that they got $1,000 a piece also. But Bill Dundee got $800 on that card. Ronnie West, the referee, got $300. Linda Street got $200 to accompany Adrian, who got $250 in a preliminary match. So a lot of those guys, they've got Jack Valiant down. It was Jack Victory. Rick McCord, Jack Victory, Hans Schroeder, Art Cruz. All those guys are making $250 a piece. Sonny King and Buddy Landell made $400 each, and Buddy Landell got $100 bonus. And I guarantee you it was for having to work with Sonny King. I said, because he hated Sonny King. He was a stand-up guy, Sonny King was, but he was impossible by that point to have a good match with. It was just abysmal. And Buddy couldn't stand it. And Dundee had to separate them. He couldn't book them together anymore because Buddy said, we're going to have a fucking fight. Now, one time at some show, Buddy got so frazzled, Sonny shot him off into the ropes and went to do the flying spear headbutt but at that point in Sonny's career, his feet weren't leaving the ground. He just leaned into it. And Buddy took the fucking shot and sat down on his ass on the mat, and then back on his back with his feet bent up, and had Sonny cover him 1, 2, 3. And as soon as Sonny got up, Buddy got up, shaking his finger at him, saying, "That's the last job I'll do for you." It was goddamn brutal. Anyway, but that was the night of the infamous Percy Cornette head shaving. Now you know where I want to go. I want to go all the way to the end of the year.
The scaffold match?
The scaffold match.
A lot of people don't realize, or a lot of people may not realize, before the Starrcade 86 scaffold matches, of course, you, the Midnight Express, and the Rock and Roll Express did a series of scaffold matches towards the end of your run, or at the end, really.
At the end,
of your
that
run
was
to
our
Mid-South.
Yeah, that was our last night in every town in the territory. 15 of them, a scaffold match in 15, and the only one that was kind of okay was in Lafayette, Louisiana. It was the Memorial Auditorium. They had a ring on the stage, and the ceiling wasn't high enough to set the scaffold up as high as they'd been doing. So it was only like 12 feet off the ground. But anyway, we did the scaffolds from late November through mid-December. It was disappointing at the Superdome. The Thanksgiving night Superdome only did $104,000. And that's New Orleans had struggled and Dog had left, and that's the town that it affected most. But still, they did 4 dome shows in 1984. And now, bear in mind, folks, this New Orleans ran a show every Monday night. That was their last weekly town. When we got there, New Orleans still ran at the Downtown Municipal Auditorium every Monday night. And then after Dog left, trying to bring business back up, they went over to UNO Lakefront Arena sometimes. We did $47,000 house there one night. It was completely different people than went to downtown. They never did the St. Bernard Civic Center. I think we were there once. They had quit using it at that point, but still there were regular events in New Orleans. So there had been, besides the 4 Superdome shows in New Orleans that year, there was another 25 house shows. So the Dome alone for 4 shows sold about 75,000 tickets and drew over $600,000. Besides those other 25 or so live events. So for the year in New Orleans, 1984, they sold about 160,000 tickets, and they paid a little over $1.2 million into one town for live wrestling. And the scaffold match in Oak City and Tulsa, we liked one and we didn't like the other one. We had to, for whatever reason, the Myriad was booked, and we had to go to the fairgrounds. So the Myriad was bigger, but the fairgrounds at Oak City, we drew a little over 8,000, paying a little over 60 grand. But we did a record in Tulsa at the Assembly Center with 8,500, paying $65,000. And so that was a double scaffold match day, because we did 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock, 2 o'clock Oak City and 8 o'clock Tulsa. But we sold over 16,000 tickets that day and grossed over $125,000 in the state of Oklahoma for 2 wrestling events. But
hold on.
Go ahead.
People don't do scaffold matches anymore. Every now and then one of them pops up. There's the New Jack Vic Grimes one.
Well, yeah, because they got ridiculous too, and it can't be good. The scaffold match can only work if the people are not coming to see a good match. The people are coming to see the heels killed. That's the only reason it works. There's no reason to have one anymore, because nobody believes wrestling.
But the idea of doing one, you understand the dangers. It's hard for me to understand how Watts okayed this. The idea of doing so many of these matches where someone could get hurt.
Well, because it was setting a lot of huge gates, and also it was the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express. It was Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Dennis Condrey, and Bobby Eaton. You didn't have to worry about anybody doing anything stupid to themselves or somebody else. Accidents can always happen, but Dundee booked them, and Dundee was the king of scaffold matches in Tennessee, because he loved that shit. He'd hang upside down like a little monkey from his legs. He was fearless of heights. He didn't give a fuck. I saw Bobby Eaton and Bill Dundee had a single scaffold match at Rupp Arena in Lexington one night with the 2-foot wide board. Not the 4 feet for the tag, but just the 2 foot wide. And it was 14 feet up. And fucking Bobby went to pile drive Dundee, and Dundee stood up under him and backdropped him on it. So that it wasn't like you had 300-pound guys up there. It wasn't like you had these reckless green guys. They were taking care of themselves, but still it was dangerous. But yes, there was a bunch of them. But anyway, where I was going with that was in Oklahoma. Oak City didn't do as well as we'd hoped. I think the Myriad would have done better because it was a bigger building, but Tulsa made up for it. But Oak City and Tulsa that year, Oak City sold 180,000 tickets and grossed $1.2 million. And Tulsa, in 21 events, they grossed $700,000 and sold 100,000 tickets.
In a lot of ways, the story of 84 is the story of Mid-South's business focus moving from Louisiana to Oklahoma.
Yes. Because once that Watts got all of the territory, the area that he wanted under his control and could program those towns the way he wanted, it was amazing. It was a fucking money-making machine. It was a license to print money. But anyway, where I was going back to Houston, and we'll close this up, but the biggest success we had with the scaffold match was in Houston. Even though the Superdome gate was a little bit larger, obviously, so were the expenses. But in Houston, we legitimately sold out 11,000 plus. It was only about $15,000 less than the Superdome house that we'd done the night before, and it was only about $13,000 less than the last Stampede, and that's because the fire marshal was there the night of the scaffold, but he wasn't the night of the last Stampede. So they had to close the door and turn people away. But for the scaffold match, it did a sellout in Houston, $89,800. And again, I'm somewhat miffed. Not at any of these people in general, but Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, and Jim Cornette. I would have taken less on this one because I didn't have to climb the scaffold. But those guys, they got $1,200 a piece. But in the semifinal match, which was Doc and, it had some combination of Reed and DiBiase and Doc and Duggan. So it would have been Doc and Duggan against DiBiase and Reed, had to be.
No.
What?
Butch Reed had just turned babyface. It probably would have been the Hacksaws against DiBiase.
That's right. It was Reed and Duggan against DiBiase and Dr. Death, and they were just starting as a team. They each got $1,000, but Reed, Duggan, and DiBiase got bonus $200. They made the same thing the guys did that climbed the scaffold. That pissed me off. Poor Doc didn't get a $200 bonus. Dundee got $1,000. I think he worked that night also, so he got $400 for one and $600 for the other. But even still then, the referees, Carl Fergie, Ronnie West made $300 apiece. Grizzly and Peter Burkholz and Jack Curtis made $500 apiece. Boyd Pierce got $200 for announcing. The curtain jerkers, the preliminary guy, Jack Victory, Tim Horner, Tony Falk got $250. Miss Linda got $250 for managing Adrian. It got $400. So that was, another good, and the scaffold was $500. I never knew that before. But God damn it, again.
You never knew that? You never knew how much the scaffold cost?
I never knew how much they paid for the scaffold. But again, the guys that went up on the scaffold and drew the second largest crowd in the history of Houston, second largest gate in the history of Houston wrestling, got the same thing as the guys that were in the underneath the semifinals featured tag match. That's not fair.
What's Scott Munns doing there?
Scott Munns was, at that time, he was going out and getting towns or TV clearances or working in the office some way. This was just paying a bunch of office people. Instead, you didn't see, still in wrestling, if somebody was working in the office, you didn't give them an hourly wage. You gave them the same thing every week, and then you took it out of the towns somehow. Nobody was on I make $10 an hour in the wrestling business or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're going to get your $500 a week, but we'll take most of it out of Houston because it's not as easy to split up fucking Greenwood, Mississippi. Who knows?
Hey, hold on. This is the last one we're going to do, but I just noticed something. Look at these payoffs. You see them all right in front of you. Once again,
yeah.
$1,200 for the main eventers, $800 for TA and Lad, and then once again, $1,000 plus $200 bonus for the guys you mentioned before. Go to the next show. Look at the payoffs.
Well, that would be I don't know because we were gone then, so I don't know what.
December 7th, 84.
Ooh.
Look at how it dropped off.
The main event guys got $300 and then they were bonused either 100, 150 or 10. Yeah. And see, the bonus also, sometimes if you went over and above and beyond the Call of Duty, sometimes if you wrestled twice and you weren't supposed to because you had to fill in for somebody, you'd get a bonus. And sometimes it was just Watts had either made a verbal commitment, you're going to make X amount of dollars a week, or you're not going to do worse than $1,000. Because he told us, when we went in, he said, you'll never do worse than $1,000 a week. And that second week, our check worked out to like 880, so he bonused us $200. This looks like a case of I can't pay my top guys what I've promised them this week, so I'm going to have to give them a bonus out of one of the better towns. Because Magnum and Ernie Ladd made $300. Ernie was just in for spots at that point and had moved to the Carolinas and was.
Well, this is his last run. They gave him the North American belt.
He is almost fucking done in the business. And, but Hacksaw Duggan got bonus 200. Steve Williams bonus 50. DiBiase bonus 200. Hercules Hernandez bonus 50. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson made 300, but they were bonused another 100. So was Butch Reed. Even Jose Lothario and Chavo and Hector got $100 bonus after $175 payoff. Dundee only got $300. Grizzly was down to $200. Shawn Michaels, $175. He was he came with Jose.
Yeah, there's actually an arrow that points from him to Jose Lothario. Yeah.
Yeah. And they wrote him in because who the fuck is Shawn Michaels? Some kid that came with Jose.
So the cage, it looks like they didn't have to pay for the cage, but there was trends. So what is that?
Yes.
They own the cage. They just have it somewhere.
That very well could have been. It could have been they had to pay the guy that had it on his truck, and instead of saying we paid for the cage, we just paid for the $250 for the guy to drag it down here. Whatever the case, it's and they had stooges to help set it up. But yeah, I don't know what the house would have been, but $300 tops after that year in a payout. The house had to be less than $30,000, one would think, and actually, I don't blame them not being able to follow the Midnight in the Rock and Roll, but you would think with this giant, high-priced fucking stack of talent that they could have done it. But you know what? We were a hard act to follow back in those days. Anyway,
as is
interesting stuff. But as you can see, the narrative that Vince made wrestling big, took it out of smoke-filled arenas, and made the guys big money was not the case. Guys made big money in various places throughout wrestling history. Whether they saved it or kept it or whatever is not germane to the equation, but you could make money in wrestling. And actually, the guys in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the top guys made better money than even the guys in the 80s because, as you see, it got spread out. You quit having so many of the old-time promoters that just paid the main event, and you got more guys that had full rosters in their territories and were running package shows and spread the payoffs out. But still, if the money was there, you could make it. And this was one territory in 1984 out of still 20 of them that were operating. It wasn't even the biggest territory, and guys were making the equivalent of $2,000 and $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000 in today's money for one night's work. That doesn't happen a lot these days, except with contract with one of the big companies, one of the few big companies. So I just shit all over myself when people say, "Well, thank goodness for Vince because at least the guys are making a bunch of money." Fuck you.
We made so much money, we paid the scaffold $500.
Yes. That's the thing. All those guys were, and okay, there's 25 guys here. There's 20 more territories. 500 guys were making some kind of money in the wrestling business, working every night. Anyway.
Hey, Jim, there is one other thing I wanted you to click on before we move on from this. There's a screenshot there. There's two of them. If you can go to the first one.
I got it.
Can you
read
read
letter
that?
From Morris Siegel. This was dated November 14th, 1961, and it's a notice to all wrestlers from the promoter at the time, Morris Siegel. It is not our intention to find things for you to do during what little leisure time you have on the weekend. So unless it is for our radio show on Saturday morning, you will not be asked to take part in any extra activities on Saturday and Sundays. And if you are asked to do so, please feel free to decline because it is not required of you. And we feel that you should have some time to rest and be with your family. I shall ask Paul to keep to a minimum the number of men used at the broadcast on Saturday and to space it out so that no one person will be called on too often.
There it is, Morris Siegel.
Well, I thought you were going to ask me why they got extra or why do they got time off on Saturday and Sunday. Houston was a Friday night town.
Yeah.
And they had radio promotion over the weekend, but they apparently were at that time in the early 60s were not running a full schedule. So therefore it, they left the guys off and
Paul's asking them to stay and do the show is what I'm taking it. I will ask Paul to stop doing this.
Paul's like, you come do the radio for me. And then real quick, there was one other. What is the date of this last February 8th, 1980? It had one of the commission report forms that they need to fill out, but basically similar payoff information, but it had their license numbers and et cetera. But we find that Killer Brooks and Tony Atlas and Gino Hernandez and Mark Lewin looked like they were the highest paid folks on the card, except for Aaron Rodriguez versus Harley Race. You want to smarten the people up on who Aaron Rodriguez was.
You may remember early on in this segment, there was a show where everyone made like $100 and Mil Mascaras got $700. Mil Mascaras is Aaron Rodriguez.
Well, this was a NWA title match between Mil Mascaras and Harley Race, and Harley got $1,842, while Mascaras got $1,769. I have to think that maybe there was a trans difference in there or whatever, but the NWA, for allowing their champion to be on the card, got $215.25. So what in 1980, the NWA champion could make $1,800 for defending his title in Houston on a Friday night. It's not what St. Louis was. We've read those payoff sheets. In 1982, and a major NWA championship match in the Checker Dome in St. Louis was worth $6,000 to the champion and the challenger for the one night. But still, $1,800 in 1980 was what today? About
just under $5,900.
About $6,000 for the NWA champion on a Friday night in Houston. But he had more places to go after that, so don't feel bad for him.
Yeah, and he had more places to go too because he never came back. Paul Bosch. Yeah, one of the reasons he left the NWA was he couldn't get Harley Race.
Well, and goddamn, and now here's the thing, and Harley Race was so busy and so booked and et cetera that Paul couldn't get him as much as he wanted him, still paying him that kind of money.
Well, there was 2 no-shows. The first one
I know.
They ran the afternoon and Harley didn't know, and apparently, and what a visual this must have been, as the fans were leaving, it may have even been like the Summit.
It was a Super Sunday at the Summit.
As the fans are all leaving and filing out, Harley Race like pulls up in a taxi and runs out of the cab into the building and everyone sees him. And then the second no-show.
Was that not the first time that they had ever been allowed by law to run wrestling in Texas on Sunday? Or at least in Houston. I don't know if it's statewide.
I have the program here somewhere, but
I'm pretty sure because they advertised Super Sunday in the Summit, the biggest building in town. It was an afternoon show, and it was the first time in Houston that wrestling had gone on Sundays.
And then the second time he no-showed, Paul Bosch said, fuck this, I'm out of the NWA. I can't trust these people. They're screwing me over. They almost got me with the fucking Briscoe Dory Funk Jr. match, but I got the race match, but they're not getting me this time. I'm calling Bockwinkel.
And also think about this, Mil Mascaras could just bop up to Houston and make the equivalent of $6,000.
You know, that's one of the things you talk about the guys who are who we recognize as the traveled draws everywhere they went. Andre the Giant, Dusty Rhodes, like those kind of guys. It wasn't just a world champion. And in Houston, specifically, at various points, there were guys you could bring in to pop a house, like after they were regulars. Johnny Valentine or a Bull Curry, Mil Mascaris, obviously case in point. JYD early on, he was an attraction they were bringing in from out of town. You know, the Andre the Giant was a big draw in Houston. He was a big deal there, so...
I have found February 22nd, 1980, where they brought in Bruno Sammartino and superstar Billy Graham to work the main event. And that, again, sold 2,928 tickets, not 12,000. The gross was $12,658, not $102,000. And Bruno and Graham both got $1,200 apiece. Oh, I tell a lie. They got $900 apiece and 300 trans. So on a $12,000 house, Bruno and Graham got from Paul Bosch almost as much as we got for a $100,000 house from Watts. And one more before we go. January 28th, 1983 sold 7,916 tickets for $52,639 because Andre the Giant was on the card, and obviously he was working against Kamala, the Ugandan giant, and that was a thing that Watts liked to do. He liked to get the giants in. Andre made $1,612. He got a $1,000 payoff, a $500 bonus, and $112 in trans. Kamala got $1,000 so that he could be paid the same as Andre, but got no bonus. And he got $50 trans.
Andre got the equivalent of just under 4,400 today.
And they drew 52,000, so that would be the equivalent of
435,000. No, hold on.
No, wait.
No. The fucking thing didn't work. Give me the number again.
$52,000.
It just added to the
$1 million.
It added it to the previous number. 140,500 and change.
Okay, well, there you go. And also on the card, Tony Atlas and Hacksaw Duggan got $850 they got $750 apiece and then separate bonuses. Stagger Lee, back again, got $800. Wrestling 2, $700. The Moondogs were there.
Interesting.
I do not remember the Moondogs going to Houston. They got $700. Chavo, $875. Dick Murdoch in a preliminary got $350. But anyway, yes.
Marty Lundy.
Oh, my God. Yep. There you go. Marty Lundy got $250.
And, of course, with Andre the Giant on the show, Vince McMahon is a payoff here, too.
$400 for McMahon. Well, and then also, related, there's, if you see down at the bottom, Dalton, that was Frank Dalton. He was the Friday for Kamala. So he got $250 to be Friday, and Vince got $400 to fucking send Andre to wrestle Kamala. And then Watts' trance, $115 in there for whatever reason.
He flew in. He took his jet. That's
and
why.
Boy, are his arms tired. But anyway, that's a $50,000 house was unusual for the state of Texas back in those days. That was good business for Houston. But when you think about it again, Andre, he was on $50,000 houses in Chicago, in Los Angeles, and all over the Philadelphia, Boston, New York, and all the big markets. And so there was an equivalent of, what'd you say, about $5,000 that, he made for a house show where he probably worked. That was a 15-minute match with him and Kamala, maybe.
I have to go back and check the date. This is January 23rd, 83. I'm thinking it's off the TV of that hot angle where Kamala bloodied Andre and body slammed him.
Yeah. And it would have been, this was the last year that Andre would be allowed to go out and do territory shots, because by the next year, Vince Jr. would have him all.
Yeah.
Fucking, and by the way, the Mid-South, the booking fee on this show to Mid-South Wrestling they have down as that's wrong. They have down as $14,000. It should have been, what the fuck should it have been for 10%? It should have been $5,000. Or did they?
That's the talent fee approximately. Because if you look at the bottom,
They put it in the wrong fucking, on the wrong line.
Yeah, you know what? There's a subtract sign there. They were doing the math there as opposed to using they're not even using the booking thing there anymore.
See, these are scratch pads. They weren't using a booking fee. All right. Nevertheless, I don't know. But anyway, what wonderful history. I'm telling you what, that is in the upper echelon of historic things in the history of the wrestling business, isn't it, Brian?
The upper echelon, absolutely.
The upper echelon. But when you get all the way to the echelon, that's when you know that you've really done it. And that's with our friends at Echelon Fit. See what I did there? I managed to swerve it around. I'm swerving you people around.
You fitted it.
Folks, if you've been working too hard instead of too smart like us, and if you're not working out enough, you want to get in shape, but you don't have time to get to the gym, the people at Echelon bring the gym home to you when you're trying to reach your fitness goals. You can help or be helped by having instructors like Nicole Griffin and Michael Brown and a community of 25,000 members with Echelon who can give you that extra push. Thousands of live and on-demand classes, great music. You can work out anytime, day or night. Pick your class, climb the leaderboard, cheer each other on. You can interact with other people doing the same thing in different places. Brian, did you know that? Are you aware of this?
I am aware of it. That's one of the great features.
One of the great features. If you want to associate with people, this is a way to do it and show them that you're better than they are. You can knock these things out with all this encouragement. And Echelon, besides the fitness app and the fitness instructors, offers a full range of affordable workout equipment, including stationary bikes, smart rowers, sleek fitness screens, and auto-folding treadmill. I assume that means it folds automatically, hopefully without you in it. Anyway, they're all connected.
You will be
with
safe.
The Echelon experience. Who could be safe from this folding treadmill?
No.
No one is safe.
No. The listeners will be safe.
You'll be safe. It doesn't hurt the ones it loves. But folks, for a limited time, what is that? A fucking goose over there? Right now, or is it a seagull? Right now, my listeners, the ones that I have left after the start of this show, however few they may be, will get a special offer from Echelon for a limited time only. Start your 30-day risk-free trial with Echelon's EX3 bike for just $1. A special risk-free offer for 30 days with the EX3 bike for only $1 to start. And free shipping on that also. The only way to get the special offer is to go to Echelon Fit. That's ECHELON Fit, FIT.com/drive. Even though this is the experience, folks, we're all in the same family. EchelonFit.com/drive for the special offer on the EX3 bike, only $1 for the 30 days for the risk-free offer. EchelonFit.com/drive. You will look like Tony Atlas when you work out with this stuff. Okie dokie, doggy daddy, what are you doing this week on the Arcadian Vanguard Network?
Well, Donkey Daddy, another action-packed week.
Doggy Daddy, not Donkey
I
Daddy.
didn't know what the hell you said, Donkey Daddy.
I could be your Donkey Daddy.
I don't want you to be my doggy or my Donkey Daddy.
Okie dokie, Doggy Daddy.
Well, who says that?
Doggy? Oh, for God's sake. Do I need to lead you through the hand, by the hand, through everything? Augie Doggy and Doggy Daddy.
Another interesting week of wrestling talk on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A new episode of Charting the Territories is out right now, available wherever you find your favorite podcast, or go to chartingthepodcast.com to download it directly. Al Getz and John Boucher take a deep dive look, of course, into the McGurk/Future Watts territory, Mid-South Wrestling, Tri-State Wrestling, whatever you want to call it. Check this out today Once again, chartingthepodcast.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
What about when Augie Doggy does a deep dive on Doggy Daddy?
The things that are existing over in your little animal kingdom over there, I don't want to know too much more about. But speaking of an animal kingdom, another action-packed series of shows, John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, then and now. Of course, John and myself go back and review his landmark wrestling radio show from 30 years ago. We are right now listening to shows from the spring of 1991, and we have a two-part episode. Part 1 is up right now. Part 2 will be up next week. Part 1, the day of WrestleMania, Steve Beverly, talking about all the WrestleMania news, how it compares business-wise to other ones, as well as the news coming out of Tokyo of Ric Flair versus Tatsumi Fujinami. And then in Part 2, which is hour 2 of that original broadcast, March 24th, 1991, for 1 hour, an out-of-control hour, Paul E. dangerously taking phone calls. No one is safe.
Paul was basically just using John's radio show as a house organ to further his evil empire at the time, was he not?
I think you could argue that, and let's give a small taste of what Paul was doing on the air on John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Once again, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts or pwspod.com. But Jim, listen to this. Tell me what you think.
Tom from Wantagh, you're next.
First of all, Paulie.
Are you a guy or a girl?
Why did you
How long
copy?
till puberty hits, fella?
Why did you copy Jim Cornette's Midnight Express?
Thank you for answering my question. Now I'll answer yours. Why did I copy Jim Cornette's Midnight Express? Well, here's a guy that's in touch with reality. Here's a guy that really is up to date on the current issues in professional wrestling. In 1987, when I was a rookie manager, which means when I was 21 years old, which you're probably a good 15 years away from hitting, Dennis Condrey came to me when I was leaving Memphis, Tennessee, and he said, I hate Jim Cornette. I hate Bobby Eaton. I'm tired of them making money on the name that I founded. And if you look at the history books, Dennis Condrey was the founder of the Midnight Express. He teamed with Randy Rose. He fired Randy Rose as his partner. He hired Jim Cornette as manager. Cornette brought in Bobby Eaton. But Dennis Condrey originated the Midnight Express. Therefore, legally, he has the right to the name. Condrey was going to get back together with Randy Rose to reform the original Midnight Express. He needed a manager. He called me because I was the best in the business. We made a lot of money together. We had a lot of success. We won the AWA World Tag Team titles when that still meant something. And then we asked for a match with Cornette and his team because Stan Lane is one of the fabulous ones. He has no business claiming the name of the Midnight Express. And we asked, we begged, we pleaded, we petitioned. Nobody would ever talk to us, so we took it upon ourselves to beat the snot out of Cornette and his team, and that's how we got the match with them. And then, of course, Randy Rose, being a loser, messed it all up with us. And it wasn't the fact, really, that Randy lost the fall in the loser leaves town match. It was the fact that we were getting rid of him anyway.
And it was one of the hottest tag team matches in recent memory, Midnight against Original Midnight, and that was great. Thanks for your call, Tom.
Well, there it is. You can hear more action like that.
Notice everybody, I love John Arezzi, but everybody on his old cassettes, Paul E. sounds like Sal Correnti there, like some weaselly rat-faced. Well, actually, I'm describing Paul E. at this point, but that was Paul E. before he hit puberty.
That's right, and there is an entire hour of Paul E. just abusing callers. That's one of the good ones. No one's voice is safe from being ridiculed by Paul E. dangerously. Of course, a young Paul Heyman. Hear that at pwspod.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Look for John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight then and now. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, The Mothership! Go through the archives today at 605pod.com or look for it wherever you find your favorite podcasts. The Mothership.
Yes, it is. Well, we've come to the main event of the program. It's a lights-out attraction. The fans can stay or leave. You didn't even know about this, Brian, last. I didn't even clue you in on this, but I accidentally had the opportunity, and I took it, to zip through some Smackdown since we didn't have to stomach the AEW program this week. That'll be on the drive-through, by the way, this week. Since AEW was on Saturday night, that'll be on the drive-through in just a few days. But I did get because a lot of people have been saying, oh, you ought to watch Smackdown. And Smackdown does have Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, and we have praised much of their stuff. And it was there, and I took the advantage of it, and I watched some Smackdown. Not the whole thing. But this didn't put me in as bad a mood as AEW normally does, and I've said it before, because for one thing, I zipped through some of the stuff I knew was just going to be boring, because I knew even on a WWE program, it's going to be boring in some cases, but it's never going to be laughably unprofessional. Laughably stupid whenever The Fiend or Alexa Bliss or whatever, but not laughably unprofessional. So I could skip some of the underneath stuff and not miss anything. But I wanted to see some Roman Reigns, and I wanted to see some more of Bianca Belair. You know why? Because since I talked about the Hell in a Cell show, Brian, maybe you can help me out on this. Why is everybody tweeting, saying to me, I said, Bianca Belair, she's very athletic. She's painfully small, in my opinion. And people are tweeting me, and I cannot believe this. I don't know where they're getting these statistics from, but they claim that Bianca Belair is 1 inch shorter than Rhea Ripley. How is that possible? How is that possible?
What do you mean, how is it possible? Genetics?
No, I'm talking about how are people saying this? I look at Rhea Ripley. She looks to me, she's looking eye to eye with Charlotte. They're closing in on 6 feet tall. And I look at Bianca Belair, and she's peeping over the top rope, standing on her tiptoes. How? She and Bayley look about the same size, but Rhea Ripley and Charlotte both look significantly taller than either of these other young ladies. How is there only 1 inch difference? What am I not seeing? Is it a tropical illusion?
I assume so.
You know,
I don't know why you don't see it.
Tropical illusions, don't you?
I've heard about them. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't have any disagreement with there being a difference of 1 inch in Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley's height.
Well, hold on. I'm not going to argue over an inch because they're also wearing heels and boots and whatever the hell. So who knows what it really is? I'm not going to argue over an inch. You said painfully small. There are women who are legitimately painfully small in the business. They look frail. They look like they're too thin.
Yes.
Not for society. I'm not saying they're too thin to live, but they look like they're going to break in half if they take too many bumps.
Yes.
There are painfully small women.
That's why I would say painfully thin.
Bianca Belair.
I didn't say Bianca Belair was painfully thin. She's very well put together, but she still looks short to me. She looks like a shorter person
She absolutely,
than Rhea Ripley looks like.
Even just with the eye test, if you look at the women, the different women they have, she looks bigger than a lot of them. She doesn't look smaller.
I'm not talking about anybody else but Rhea Ripley here. I'm saying I want to see them standing back to back, and I want somebody to prove to me there's only 1 inch difference in their height. That's what I'm saying.
I'm looking for I'm actually right now on the computer. There are, unfortunately, no one is saying, hey guys, get back to back. Let's take some photos.
Well, see, that
so
means
I can't really find anything, but well, here's the other thing. I'm looking at the photos of Bianca. Her height, it goes from the top of her head, not the braid on top of her head, because it sticks straight up.
Right. I'm not talking about hair. Then Andre really was 7'4" if you count hair.
Okay, I have a photo here of Raquel Gonzalez, Rhea Ripley, and Bianca Belair in the ring together. You know what? I don't know what Rhea Ripley's wearing on her feet. Let me start by saying that. It does look like she's a little shorter than Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair.
Well, you don't know what Bianca Belair's wearing on her feet either.
No.
She could be wearing 2 duck-billed platypuses on her feet for all we know. But I'm just saying.
No, they're on the main roster. I don't think they were there that day.
All right. Anyway, Bianca Belair came out and did a promo and opened this Smackdown event on Friday night, June 25th. And besides the fact I will start out with what I didn't like. I hate it when wrestlers call the belts titles like they don't even know what they are.
They don't have a choice in the matter.
I know it, but just, I worked for the WWF in a high capacity and was on a lot of their television and never uttered the phrase sports entertainment. I always found a way around it. As a matter of fact, I double Augie dog dare somebody to find me using the phrase sports entertainment in a promo or in, unless it was a commercial where I was reading the copy. I don't know. That may have happened. But anyway, Bianca did a promo. It was very well delivered. It was very well rehearsed. It was an acting scene with scripted material. And she did it very well. But it's the same thing as everybody else is doing these days. They're given a scene to play. What was it? Fucking idiot said, my employer give me a role to play. And then Seth Rollins comes out and interrupts with music and everything. And he crows about beating Cesaro and kind of gives a little backhand compliment to, in a smart-ass way to Bianca and says she kind of fluked by. And now we find out that he's teaming with Bayley tonight against Bianca Belair and Cesaro.
Oh, joy.
And then Bayley comes out. And she did the best job so far of anybody delivering a promo. Seth was over the top a little bit. At least he wasn't the monotone Monday Night Messiah. He was going for a little oomph there. But here was the problem with this. Nobody is running this show. There is no announcer that is running this show. There's no play-by-play man. There's no host of it. There's nobody. It's just women or men, wrestlers, talent coming out with pre-scripted, prepared, rehearsed, memorized verbiage and emoting their scene until the next person interrupts. And this took 15 minutes. And they had halfway through it, they'd already announced that the tag match was a thing to begin with. So there's not even any surprise match being made here. And then finally Bayley comes and knocks Bianca, and Bianca nails her, and Seth stops her from getting on Bayley anymore. And Bayley tackles Bianca, gets some heat, but here comes Cesaro. Bayley's mad at Cesaro. Belair kicks her out of the ring, blah, blah, blah. It's all phony, and here's why. Nobody's running the show. Besides the fact it took the first 15 minutes of the show to do this when they could have done it in much less than 10. It's all fucking made up. If there's an announcer at the top of the program that brings out Bianca Belair, ladies and gentlemen, the new women's champion, or she retained in Hell in a Cell, or whatever the fuck the premise is, and she comes out and starts giving an interview, and as she mentions one of her fucking opponent, if Seth wanted to come out and fucking do that, then Seth can come out and interrupt. Then the announcer says, wait a minute, this is Bayley's time, or this is Bianca's time. Why are you out here? You don't have anything to do with this. And he says what he's going to say. But then here comes Bayley. And now the announcer reacts to it again, but there's an anchor position where it still looks like the show is in someone's control nominally, but is being taken over by these wrestlers going into business for themselves and coming out when they're not supposed to and don't belong, because it's happening organically on the sperm of the moment. And then when there's fucking physicality, then somebody representing the promotion can come out and make the match. Well, if this is the way it's going to be, we'll have a tag team match right after this. Blah, blah, blah. Theodore R. Long or anybody else, playa. But it's just the guys and girls coming out, doing their own shit, saying their own shit, being allowed to run wild over this program and do what they want. And that's phony. And it's just acting scenes in the middle of fucking scripted fucking wrestling interaction. It's plastic, synthetic, boom. So then they have a mixed tag. Yeah, let me get rid of that. Seth and Cesaro work well together. The girls weren't in much the first half. But, of course, the girls have to come in. When one of the guys tags his female partner, the other girl has to come in because they are still not so completely lost the plot of wrestling that they have intergender matches in the WWE and hopefully never shall, because it's fucking stupid. But when they get a heat on the guy, then the guy makes tag to the girl makes the comeback with the other girl, blah, blah, blah. Mixed tag, At one point, Bianca, Bailey had gotten heat on Bianca, and Bailey actually was the best worker in this whole episode. She looks and works more like a heel than Seth does. But she got heat on Bailey or heat on Bianca, and then they had a double knockout, and Bianca just reaches up and cold tags Cesaro, and Bailey never tagged. Seth just jumped in. I thought they were going to make something out of that, but it's just that she just didn't do it. And then Cesaro comes in and makes a comeback, a big swing, but Seth stops him, and they get some heat there. And boom, boom, boom. And then finally, Seth tags Bailey back in, but Bianca's all over Bailey, but Seth is running from Cesaro and bumps into Bianca as she's about to give her finish to Bailey, and Bailey pinned her. It was a decent finish. There were no men in any way selling for women. It wasn't bad for a mixed tag team match, except for the fact that, and this is not something that was confined just to this, but they do it all the time. A 20-minute opening interview where everybody's allowed to come out and say what they want, do what they want, and make matches if they want. You never even see the announcers. A couple of times during the program, they'll get an on-camera at the desk. These announcers never even stand up. They never have a stick mic in their hand. Nobody ever conducts an interview anymore out in the arena. And that's what makes all this so phony looking. Most people don't even understand why it comes off as phony and scripted and pre-prepared. And hopefully now that I've just mentioned that, they'll realize that's a big part of what it is. There's nobody running this fucking show. There's nobody in charge. But anyway, the running storyline through this whole thing was that Jey Uso is pissed off and not there because of the way that the family thing with Reigns has been going. So now Jimmy Uso is going to try to prove himself to Roman Reigns, and Heyman has dared him. As a matter of fact, Heyman dared him to win a match tonight to prove himself to Roman Reigns. Apparently they're able to, and Paul even mentioned, if we get you the match, so in the next hour and 20 minutes on this network television program, we've just got 10 or 15 minutes laying around we hadn't accounted for. We'll stick in an extra match. They could cover this easily if anybody gave a shit. Why couldn't it be, Uso, you've got a match tonight. If you can win it, you can prove yourself. Just little things. They need to close their loopholes. Do you know the Possum King has been dethroned? Did you hear about this?
No, I did not know that. Is a new king?
They had the coronation of the new king, Shinsuke Nakamura.
Oh, get out of here.
Not to be confused with Michael knock it the fuck off and get off my television over on the other side.
No confusion there. Long live the king.
So the Possum King, Baron Corbin, is dead. Long live the new king, Shinsuke. Yeah, him.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it.
Good job.
Because there was some moron in the ring with a guitar. He wasn't Elias, but he's fucking rotten. And he's over the top, and he's phony, and he's clowny, and he introduced Shinsuke, and that's when I fast-forwarded that. And then they had a Money in the Bank qualifying match between Big E and Apollo Crews, and I thought about seeing if Major Nuts was going to interfere in some kind of way, but since I hate the Money in the Bank concept, it's so overdone, and the briefcase and the whole thing, and cash in, I skipped that. But then Sonya Deville was in the ring. She has an evil look to her. She's got a very dark, evil facial look. She could be like Cruella Deville if you really piled the fucking heat on her. She introduced Carmella, whomever Carmella may be. I've heard the name. I've now seen her. She's certainly a healthy young lady. She is in a women's Money in the Bank ladder match. And she starts talking. She's not in the match. She's one of the girls in the match because now they have to have a women's Money in the Bank ladder match because they got the men's. And she's one of the people in it. And apparently she's a conceited airhead valley girl type. She's, oh, yeah, you know, well, really? And then Liv Morgan interrupts. And I said, okay, this is going to be some pretty girls doing bad acting. So I fast forwarded. I came back from break. Guess what they were doing, Brian?
More bad acting?
They were trying to have a match.
Oh.
And this was even worse. These girls are both so light when they stand on the ropes, they don't bend. I'm surprised a strong wind wouldn't blow them away. And they managed to have this fight, Carmella and Liv Morgan, without messing up anybody's eye makeup. Their hair was good. They didn't sweat. No eye makeup was mussed up. They just had a fight. These two are very beautiful girls, and you know what the fuck? They look like if they broke a fucking fingernail, it would be instant hospitalization. So I'm just trying to think of that guy that used to watch Houston wrestling every Saturday night on Channel 39 in Houston and saw Bruiser Brody and Abdullah the Butcher and all these people, and they're in a coma, medical coma for 40 years, and they turn on wrestling and they see these two girls attempting to have a wrestling match. And by the way, do you remember in the territory days, depending on the territory and the arena and the attraction, the female-male split was like 60-40 for guys, 30-40% were women. In if the Rock and Roll Express or Magnum TA or somebody like that was hot in a territory, it'd be 50 to 60% women. Now it's 50 to 60% women in the ring and 5% outside. Well, I don't know about WWE house shows. Somebody out there that's done some market research. Well, when they were I'm talking about for the last 15 years. In the territories, the crowds were split, certainly no less than 30-35% female. And like I said, with hot attractions that appeal to the women, it was up 50 to 60%. The house shows were female. Somebody that was at a WWE house show when they still had fans over the last few years, tell me what the fucking split is. Because I've seen a lot of other shows, and it's 95-5 against the women, if that. So we got more women's wrestling than ever before, and less women in the crowd. In the days where it was 50% women, sometimes there wasn't a female of any type on the card at all. Anyway, so then basically the match that Jimmy Uso got was against Dolph Ziggler. And I don't know why that a heel stooge is trying to prove himself to the top heel by wrestling a heel. I'm not really understanding that. And Ziggler got heat and Uso sold. I love Dolph Ziggler. I haven't seen a lot of Jimmy. This was Jimmy Uso wrestling, but this match didn't seem to click. Maybe just style clash. I don't know. Bobby Roode took a nice bump over the desk when Uso did a dive and shoulder tackled him, and he took a bump over the desk, and Ziggler hit Uso with something fucked up onto the stairs and got some heat on him through the break. And then again, they come back from the break. They're getting heat on Uso, the right-hand babyface to the top heel. They kicked it up a notch in the second segment. They were doing some stuff, and then suddenly Uso hits a super kick. Boom, 1, 2, 3. I'm not saying one super kick shouldn't be the finish. That's refreshing. It's just it came out of like drop-down hip toss. We're going to do, super kick, boom, there it is. It's over. It was sudden. I don't know, is he supposed to be a babyface we feel sorry for against Roman Reigns or whatever because he went back to get the okay from Roman and Roman just walked away from him and Heyman kind of blew him off. But then the best segment was the last segment. And by the way, it doesn't take too long to go through this 2-hour show, does it? Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman in the ring, and they showed the VTR of Reigns destroying the Mysterios. And then Paul did his promo, and he went over Roman Reigns' victims list. Cesaro got clobbered, and this guy got this, and that guy got... He went through everybody while Reigns stood there, had the reactions and the attitude and the facial condescending look. And Paul Heyman is not only the best promo in wrestling, he's the best orator on television. And finally, he gets the part, there's no one left. And then he presents the microphone to Reigns, who milks the spot. And as he starts to open his mouth, Edge music. Here comes Edge. Holy jumping shitballs. He comes in, big brawl. Edge kicks ass. Reigns hits the Superman punch and stops him, gets a chair, but Edge spears him. put Reigns' head on the chair, went out of the ring to get another one. And this, if they could have just done without this fucking phony concerto bullshit that cannot possibly look good, but you put the top heel's fucking head on a chair laying in the ring and then jump out of the ring to go get another chair and expect him to be there when you come back. But thankfully, Uso, he comes out and he gets all over Edge and stops that, but Edge comes back and spears Uso through the barricade, giving Reigns and Heyman time to powder to the stage to live to fight another day, and that's the way we go off the air. It's hard to watch a 2-hour program to be interested in the main event and everything else is just filler, but that was a good piece of business, and Reigns and Heyman together is gold, and, you know, Edge had all kinds of fire to him, and whatever they're doing with they're just sacrificing everybody, I guess, for a year to Roman Reigns to get something going so that then somebody that they hopefully pick carefully can slay the dragon and it'll mean something. What do you think?
I was surprised it went back to Edge. You know, there have been a lot of rumors about Cena. There have been a lot of rumors about Brock. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. The family drama stuff I'm kind of getting a little sick of.
Well, I haven't seen that much of it, so it's not old to me.
No, but every time we watch it, it's been this for about a year now. You know, shit or get off the pot. I'm ready for him to, like, kind of do some more shit.
I don't think this rules out either Cena or Brock. For one thing, July comes before August. They got to do something else before SummerSlam. So I think this could be in addition to one or the other, and I think it would be. I'd a whole lot rather see Cena come back at SummerSlam and draw the house there, but I'd a whole lot rather wait for Brock until crawling up on WrestleMania season so they can do something really tasty if they think of it. But anyway, a little Smackdown palate cleanser there. That was my thoughts. So some of that stuff, but I want somebody to give me a legitimate tale of the tape on Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, not bullshit published, advertised heights and weights, but something where they're standing together, facing each other or away from each other, and I can't see either that or it's the way things appear. Look at Pac in AEW. With that physique, you could stand him in an empty ring and let him flex his muscles and say, this guy's 6 feet tall, 230. But they announce him at 188 pounds. So, you know, I'm just saying.
And Bianca Belair is taller than him.
I see, again, you think Bianca Belair is taller than Pac?
Yes. You don't?
To what do you base? Well, I've never seen him in the same place, but what would you base that on?
I base it on every time I've seen him. He's one of the shorter wrestlers. I'm not saying it takes anything away from his character as a man. However, he looks to be 5'5".
Well, the thing is, I'm just thinking, I'm seeing him being the same height as all the other guys that he's in the ring with in AEW, and I'm like, well, you may be right. They're all a bunch of fucking munchkins.
I will say, for the record, I looked at some photos online, because there were some recent ones of Triple H celebrating his role in women's history with Rhea and Bianca and Raquel Gonzalez.
Triple H and Susan B. Anthony, right up there, I'm telling you.
But you could see them next to each other, and she's clearly, even with or without boots, clearly smaller than Rhea Ripley.
Thank you.
And Raquel Gonzalez, for the record.
I've never brought her into it. But anyway, all right, don't believe everything you hear on Twitter. That's the moral to the story for this show. And speaking of morals, the moral to the story for the drive-thru is we're going to watch AEW's Saturday night extravaganza and some more good stuff from the viewers, the listeners, music, songs, questions, comments, suggestions, cooking recipes. We'll have it all for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's your show.
That's my show, The Good Show.
Well, we'll do that Tuesday. And next week, we'll do something else here. And until then, We're done here for now. If you have no more questions, folks, you're free to leave. Thank you. Fuck you. Bye-bye, everybody.